Okay. Good evening, everyone. I call the Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024 Peninsula School District Board of Directors meeting to order. Let the record show that Directors Glover and Olson are absent and excused this evening. Will you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, approval of the agenda. Is there any discussion prior to the vote?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we add an item, 9.2.
Sorry, 9.3.
Oh, sorry, there's a 9.2. 9.3, under new business, to allow for a discussion of WASDA resolutions and legislative positions.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the amended agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
It's been moved by Chuck and seconded by Jennifer. All in favor say aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion is carried. The agenda is approved. Item 4 this evening is a very special staff recognition. I'd like to call John Helwig up. Is he here? Yes, there he is. Sorry. Okay. We are here celebrating another significant accomplishment of some of our outstanding educators. So, John, would you please speak about National Board Certified Teacher Appreciation?
I will, but I'm actually going to turn it over to our facilitator. National Board is near and dear to my heart as National Board Certified Teacher myself, but the person who does the heavy lifting in our district is Mary Casely, so I'd have her come up and introduce our.
Thanks, John. So I am honored to get to come again this year to talk to you about our new National Board Certified Teachers and our renewed National Board Certified Teachers. I would like to give just a little background about National Board before I do that. And to talk about what impact National Board Certified Teachers have within our schools and for our students. So more than 2 decades of research has proven that National Board Certification has a significant and measurable impact on student learning, especially for students in high-needs schools, as well as teacher practice and teacher retention. Studies show that National Board Certification supports increased student learning and achievement, retention of high-quality teachers, effective mentoring of novice teachers, and high-quality professional learning. We also know that National Board Certified Teachers who are engaged in a support cohort achieve National Board Certification at a higher level, and Peninsula School District proudly supports a National Board support cohort for any of our teachers who are interested in pursuing National Board Certification. And I must also give some props to Jessie Hupper. She's a teacher at Gig Harbor High School. She does the most work with our National Board Certified Teachers and really coordinates and runs that cohort program. So without further ado, our new certified teachers are, and I have a couple of them in the audience here, so if I call your name, would you please stand? Kana Houston from Gig Harbor High School has certified in adolescent and young adulthood English and language arts. We have Ben Pineo from Peninsula High School, who is also certified in adolescent and young adulthood English language arts. And you're going to notice a theme here. Jen Poole has also certified, from Gig Harbor High School, has certified in adolescent and young adulthood English language arts. And then once teachers do initially certify, every 5 years they can redo their certification, they can renew. And that's no small feat either. It takes a lot of effort to continue to keep that certificate active. So we have quite a few who have renewed this year. So in the area of adolescent and young adulthood science, 3 of our Gig Harbor High School teachers have recertified. That's Adina Berkey, Jennifer Bookman, and Eric Wolgemuth. In the area of early adolescent science from Harbor Heights Elementary School, we have Melissa Dower. In the area of early and middle childhood literacy, reading, and language arts, from Pioneer Elementary School, we have both Morgan Hagenes and Liz Kranich. From from Arndale Elementary School, Tatum Mitchell. And from Discovery Elementary School, Abby Davis. In the area of adolescence and young adulthood social studies and history, from Gig Harbor High School, we have Chris Couvert. And in the area of early childhood through young adulthood school counseling, our interim CTE coordinator, Stephanie Valinsky. Those are our new and renewed National Board Certified Teachers.
Outstanding. Should we get a picture? I would love to have Ben and Melissa come up here. Let's do a picture together. Yeah, all the way up front. And the chairs are so far back. Space for better photo op. Yes, of course. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah. Right here, press. Yes. It's a lot of work. I know. I'm even on a stair. Okay, item 5 this evening is comments from the community. I will call you up to speak at the podium. Please announce your first and last name. You will have 3 minutes or less, 3 minutes to speak this evening. We will be stopping everyone right at 3 minutes. So first up this evening, we have Chris Doherty.
Hi, good evening. My name is Chris Doherty, and I'm the parent of 2 students in the PSD district. I would like to thank the superintendent, board, and administrators for their discussion during the study session 2 weeks ago. While I was not physically present, I watched the live stream until its conclusion around 10 p.m. I know that we have educators and district employees who care about students and understand the gravity of harassment, intimidation, and bullying issue within our district. However, I am concerned that it is not being taken seriously by all. I recently read the article in Key Peninsula News where a PHS administrator claimed not to hear the racial slurs in the school. This statement reflects naivety and dismisses the seriousness of the challenges that BIPOC and LGBTQIA students encounter daily. Merely not hearing it doesn't negate its occurrence. Employing a diverse range of educators and providing students with a curriculum that embraces diversity will only foster compassion and empathy towards other cultures. Thank you.
Next, we have Bethany Davis.
Hello again. My name is Bethany Davis, and I have 6 children in the district. The district's public mission is to be the best school district in the state that prepares each child to be a successful global citizen by providing innovative, rigorous programs set within a culture of belonging. I applaud this very worthwhile vision. The district also has a goal that every child belongs, matters, and will be provided an environment in which to succeed, and describes this environment as an inclusive community and culture where everyone is safe, valued, respected, and finds a sense of belonging. Also an excellent goal, but one that the district unfortunately is failing to achieve. The strategic plan reports that more than half of our middle school students, 59%, do not feel a sense of belonging, and a whopping 69% of our high schoolers don't either. The reality is that some students are having amazing experiences and thriving in our district. The unified basketball teams are a great example of the power of inclusiveness. Vaughn's Month of Belonging was a huge success. But some students are not thriving. Some students are being left behind or being bullied, harassed, and tormented, or even being driven out of the district, finding a safer learning environment elsewhere. These students overwhelmingly are racially diverse kids, LGBTQ kids, neurodivergent kids, etc. In other words, the kids whose society our district and their peers have deemed different. For the district to meet its own goals, the safety and well-being of students who are different must be made a priority. After all, no district students flee from because they don't feel safe or included can be the best district in the state. Some folks are concerned that advocating for kids who are different in actuality means imparting radical ideologies onto all students. This is unequivocally incorrect. You can't turn a white kid black by teaching them about racism and how to be anti-racist. You can't turn a straight kid gay by teaching them about same-sex families and relationships. You can't turn a neurotypical kid neurodivergent by teaching them about ADHD or autism. By advocating for different students, this benefits all students. By teaching our students that every human being has a right to be here, to be safe, to be included, and to be celebrated, it paves the way for all students to thrive. The data shows that what is currently being done is woefully inadequate. Too many students do not feel safe. Too many many students do not feel any sense of belonging. School events are being held at churches that are publicly anti-LGBTQ. Bullying and harassment go unnoticed and unmitigated. Slurs are a rampant epidemic. Articles are being written in the school newspaper about Jesus Christ and why we celebrate Easter. Imagine not being Christian, not being straight, not being white, not being typical in this district. No wonder so many students do not feel like they belong. I call on the school board to prove that you mean it when you say you want an inclusive community and culture where everyone is safe, valued, respected, and finds a sense of belonging. Those are your words. Please follow through and prove that you mean them, as without an environment of safety, inclusion, and belonging, achieving any other district goal or vision is impossible. If a flower isn't blooming, you don't blame the flower. You fix the environment. Thank you.
Next, we have Lisa Marcus.
Hello again. I'm Dr. Lisa Marcus, and I was one of many parents who spoke to you at your last meeting about connecting your work on bullying to the targeting of students of color and LGBT plus students in the district. I spoke about my dismay that my daughter had to leave the school district to attend high school where she would be safe and affirmed in her identity as a queer person. You were presented with a letter that had over 230 signatures calling on you as a board to urgently address the climate of intolerance and words and acts of hate directed at BIPOC, LGBT+, and neurodivergent students. The letter urged you to acknowledge the problem, and yet your study session, which included many thoughtful reports by concerned and striving educators, never addressed the specific issues facing marginalized students, and never once used the words racism, discrimination, anti-queer hate, or acknowledged the targeting of students who are neurodiverse. I am here to ask that you acknowledge the problem, take our concerns seriously, and that you reach out to meet with us as soon as possible. With a lot of attention focused on the consequences of bullying, we should not lose sight of the curriculum as a site for making impactful change and perhaps preventing hate and discrimination in the first place. Let me speak from my own experience as a teacher of literature and writing. What are our kids reading in school? Whose voices and experiences are uplifted and whose are invisible? Books are both windows and doors. They are powerful tools for affirming one's identity and existence, and they are windows into the experiences of others that can promote empathy and understanding. Let us not only focus on bullying and discrimination after it has taken place, but look to what we are teaching in our classrooms. Are we promoting diverse experiences and voices, books by and about queer people, people of color, and those who are neurodiverse? Or are they invisible and marginal in the curriculum? If so, we are sending a message that the people occupying those identities are unimportant, expendable, and unworthy of our full attention and care. We shouldn't be surprised then when those are the very students targeted. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Peter Frazier.
Hi, I'm Peter Fraser, the parent of a Gig Harbor High School student. Like the other speakers said before, I want to thank you for the response, for the information you provided on the steps you have taken and are taking to make PSD a more inclusive district. Thank you for having an open study session at the last board meeting to address what the district is doing to deal with harassment, intimidation, and bullying. While these steps are encouraging, the first and second-hand accounts of acts and words of discrimination, anti-queer hate, and racism against Black, Indigenous, people of color, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer questioning, intersex, asexual plus, disabled, and neurodivergent students in the Peninsula School District necessitates a more urgent and thorough response. Our first request in the letter we sent to you was an acknowledgement of the problem. Are you willing to admit that this is a serious problem? Will you acknowledge the acts and words of discrimination, anti-queer hate, and racism against BIPOC, LGBTQI+, disabled, and neurodivergent students? Will you say any of these words publicly? There is a need for substantive change, not just performative. There are some schools in our district that are making substantive progress, but it will take your leadership to make sure that all our schools are doing this. In some ways, it feels similar to a place of business that has a sign in the window saying that they are welcoming and inclusive to all people. Yet, when you hear from BIPOC, LGBTQI+, disabled and neurodivergent individuals that shop there, they say that it does not feel safe and that they are harassed and discriminated against. Or that a few employees treat them with respect, but on the whole, it doesn't feel like a safe space. Will you center the voices of BIPOC, LGBTQI+, disabled and neurodivergent students, staff, parents, community members to guide the process of dealing with this urgent problem? Will you truly listen, acknowledge, and seek to solve this problem with new ideas and insights? Thank you for being willing to meet with us. We look forward to working together soon to urgently deal with the ongoing problem.
Thank you. Next, we have Sarah Garriott.
Learning to set my own timer because when I put my glasses down, I can't see yours. All right. I am Sarah Garriott. I was truly impressed at the last board meeting regarding bullying by how much this administration cares about our children and how you are trying to formulate models to solve this problem. Thank you. Nevertheless, I was disheartened to hear that the consensus seemed to be let's double down on the very things that have not proven to work. Trauma-informed social-emotional learning, which is proving to be a national disaster. Restorative justice, which, according to at least one father, led directly to the death of his daughter Meadow in the Parkland shooting. And more Marxist DEI practices were recommended. I express my sincere condolences to the families who have been victims of harassment, intimidation, and bullying. I have heard several heart-wrenching stories. It's awful. I know that my husband and I try very hard to teach our children that as much as we might disagree with a person's beliefs or lifestyle, they are still our neighbors and we welcome them. I believe in modeling being a good neighbor for my children. For example, I would never seek to stop our Moms for Peace friends from being in the community maritime parade. Although we might disagree on certain issues, I believe in a truly inclusive community for all and being okay with agreeing to disagree peacefully. Nevertheless, I continue to advocate that it's not okay for me to teach my personal political or ideological beliefs to their children and vice versa in a public classroom, which is why I advocate for getting back to ideological neutrality in public school with a focus on the academics we all agree upon. I don't teach my children to drum up allies in school because I believe teaching that there are classmates who are their allies implies that anyone who has not declared full allegiance to my child's political, sexual, or religious beliefs as an ally must necessarily be an enemy. Is that what we should be teaching children? Does it foster a sense of belonging? If you don't agree politically or ideologically with your neighbor or classmate, if your skin is white, if you're heterosexual or a Muslim or Christian and do not declare allyship, you will be classified as an enemy? Social justice then demands that you can be censored, kicked out of community parades, put on a hate group map, silenced, have your name put on the AG's hate list, threatened by fully armed Black Panthers at community events, be targeted by the FBI, be labeled domestic violent extremists by your government, be surveilled, imprisoned, or worse? If that is not harassment, intimidation, and bullying, I don't know what is. I have extensively worked outside the United States and have studied 4 languages at universities, both at home and abroad. I have a great love and passion for people and their beautiful diversity. I believe we achieve peace with others when we seek to build on our common beliefs rather than promote victimhood and narcissism by micro-focusing on immutable characteristics. Public education is to pass down academic knowledge to the next generation. Society collapses if it fails to do that. Without even the basic ability to read, write, complete mathematical operations, self-esteem plummets and poor behavior escalates. I recommend we seek to excel academics, set high expectations, grade and discipline on credit and merit, rather than socialist redistribution schemes and equitable outcomes. Thank you.
Okay. That concludes public comment for the evening. We're moving on to item 6, the consent agenda. Is there any discussion prior to the vote? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
And I'll second.
It's been moved by Jennifer and seconded by Chuck. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Consent agenda has been approved. Item 7 this evening are our reports. Our first item is 7.1, the school improvement plan progress monitoring and winter testing data for our elementary schools. So I would like to invite Assistant Superintendent John Helwick back up to start us off.
Thank you for listening to our updates tonight. I'd like to start by giving an overall kind of district improvement plan from the elementary view before we get to data and then our school reports. There's several actions that all of the schools, when we meet together in August, agree that if we can collectively commit to these and apply these, we're likely to see improvement. And so I'm going to outline some of those that we talked about and how they've kind of played out during the year. One is a focus on MTSS commitments, multi-tiered systems of support. So this has been an ongoing thing for a few years, so we want to make sure that in every elementary school, we're teaching classroom and common area behaviors, we're posting and referencing a matrix to reinforce our behaviors, and we have positive reinforcement systems. And those are a few examples. We also have been doing universal design for learning. This is an inclusive program, and we have 3 areas we've really been focusing on: making sure that we have clear learning objectives that are posted and clear to every student. We have flexible methods, which allow students to have choice in how they access and demonstrate learning, and collaboration and community. And all of those pieces are designed to make our classrooms more inclusive. We have 6-week cycles that we've been starting this year. So we met in the summer and came up with kind of our baseline action plans that we're going to use to meet the goals that we've set. And then 6 weeks later, they meet with their building leadership team. They look at the evidence that's been collected and they say, well, our action plans still match what we think is the best way to meet our goals? And if not, what adjustments do we need to make? And they've been doing that every 6 weeks. We've been doing instructional walks, K-12 together this time. So we have high school administrators going into elementary schools and vice versa, and middle schools. And we've hit 11 of the schools so far. And the host school present their school improvement plan, and then they go into the classrooms and they can debrief and give the principal feedback about what did we see or not see that's going to help us meet those goals. We've also had AWSP, our professional organization for principals. We've had building leader training led by Scott Seaman and his colleague Camrika Airy Turner, and they've been leading monthly professional development based on kind of the AWSP leadership framework and the kind of triad of learning, systems, and culture. And that's been an outstanding training for our principals. We have a few things that are elementary specific. One is, that you've been hearing about, is our letters training. We have 60 pilots of teachers, and then we have all our administrators are going through the letters program, and that's been really a transformational piece to what we're doing. And also Lisa Ray and her team have put together an MTSS hub, which then our teachers can then access to provide interventions for students who aren't meeting reading goals. And then Kelly Pruitt, our elementary instructional facilitator, has been helping to train our lab teachers and other teacher groups on these new kind of intervention programs. So that's a little overview of things that we're doing district-wide. And now we're going to hear from James, and then we'll hear from our principals.
Hi. So we've got quite a bit of data up here, and I want to go through a couple of the points because it's accurate and perhaps misleading at the same time. So I want to make sure that we understand what we're looking at. So district-wide and by grade, we've got to look at regular attendance rates, DIBELS proficiency, iReady reading proficiency, and iReady math. These are all a little bit funny and maybe counterintuitive in a few cases. So regular attendance, there's a lot of different ways to measure attendance. OSPI uses at least 3 different ways to measure attendance in their own business rules, which is fun. So what they're measuring here, and kind of their most important metric, is the percentage of students who have attended 90% or more of the school year thus far. So that 10% absenteeism is where the state and other national organizations draw the line at chronic absenteeism. So we're at about 1/5 of our students chronically absent. This is a pretty large increase. It's consistent with what our state and the rest of the nation are seeing as we've come out of the pandemic. So it's worth noting, and that's where that is. Our actual daily attendance rates are higher because each student isn't necessarily missing every day. So a few different ways to look at attendance, and we want to make sure that we're aware of which one.
You mentioned the pandemic. Is there any way that they're able to collect, and this is probably too fine grained, why students are absent? Because I know since the pandemic, I'm a lot more sensitive about keeping my kids home now, where
Yeah.
I think in the past it was culturally acceptable to just send them to school with some Kleenex. But
Yeah.
I think we all keep them home now, and as we're instructed to do. So
I'd say there's not high quality published research on that yet. But intuitively, yes, it's families thinking about keeping their kids home more. It's also likely some families thinking about, my kid can get caught up online because we're so used to doing things online. So it's probably a bit of a double-edged sword there. Yeah. So Dibble's proficiency in the next column over, we can see that we've got mostly growth. In Dibble's, the assessment gets more challenging as the year goes on. So for a student or for a school to sort of stay at the same proficiency level, that means that students are growing. Because the scoring gets more challenging as the grade goes on. So it's an important point to keep in mind, because it's very different than the way that iReady does it.
So James, I'm going to ask that you look at that first, Dibbles, and talk to us about exactly what does that 65 and
Yeah.
then plus 9 mean?
So 65% of first graders in the winter were reading at or above grade level at that time of the year. So again, Dibbles is adjusting, so the fall expectation for a first grader is much lower than the January expectation for a first grader. That's 9 percentage points higher than where we were in the fall. So as the test has gotten harder, more students have also passed it, which is great, right? A big contrast with iReady, which is holding students consistently to end-of-year expectations. So we see very low proficiency rates in the fall. That's what we should see, right? If we saw really high proficiency rates, we should probably consider moving them up a grade, right? So we're at, in the winter, again, looking at first grade, 52.8% of students meeting end-of-year expectations prior to the end of January. iReady is, first grade, maybe not a great example since there's not a state test, but iReady is designed to be pessimistic compared to our state test. So students will not quite pass iReady who will rather safely pass Smarter Balanced. The reason that that's designed to be pessimistic is so that we don't miss a chance to intervene on a student. We wouldn't want to create a false sense of confidence and think everything was fine and then get to the end of the year and then be shocked at the results. So we want to make sure that we're kind of casting that wide net for who might need an intervention. So we see a pretty huge amount of growth, right? So less than a quarter of our students were reading on grade level, meeting grade level expectations for first grade at the start of the year. That's actually quite high that we even had a quarter of them if we look at kind of our peers around the state or nation. And then we're substantially higher. Again, that's the percentage of students who would have passed a Smarter Balanced if it had been given to them in January. So these proficiency rates, we would expect them to increase again as we move into the spring. That's just where they were at on those end of year expectations in January. Then you look at our math numbers, same idea with iReady, holding students to those end of year expectations the entire year. So we've got pretty low proficiency rates in the beginning. Kids don't know how to do the math because we haven't taught them. Right? And then as we've taught them, they've learned quite a bit. And so you see those growth numbers look much larger than Dibble's, again, because we're measuring a little differently in both of those assessments. So that's a look at our district data. And then we've got, we're moving into schools, and I think we're alphabetical, right? Yeah. Okay.
Can I ask a question about that real quick? Sorry. I don't know if our question was the same, but I'm just looking at how the proficiency rates were going up, first grade, second grade, third grade, and then fourth grade and fifth grade kind of went back down. That was my wondering if we have any insight as to why that's happening.
I've got a crackpot theory, but I want to hear the real data person.
Data or crackpot? Where do we want to go?
I can give a longer answer, but in essence, the test gets harder.
Okay.
So the standards are substantially harder as we move into 4th and then especially 5th grade.
Yeah, okay.
So that's it.
Well, fourth is our cohort that was COVID kindergartners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. Sorry, I'm fighting allergies right now, so my throat's a little sore, so I'm going to try to make it through, but it's been a tough talk day. So as you can see, we have growth on our iReady chart that you can see up there. So we have our fall results on the bottom, and then up top is our winter most recent that we took in January. So you can see that we have an increase from 51% of students at grade level to up to 66% in that core green. So you want to see the green, right, where students are either at or above grade level or mid. We also, if you're looking at the red, right, we've decreased students. So students who have 2 or more years below, the interventions are working, and so it's going down from 13% down to only 8%. Yes.
So Jessica, I'm going to ask that could you, at least on that one, can you kind of point out and just be really explicit because you're the very first one?
Of course.
Okay. I think it's really easy for those of us that are used to really looking at these.
Yep.
But just so that there's no question for people when they're looking at, because I would imagine most of you are going to have all this. Okay, so you are the demonstrator.
Okay. So again, the bottom one's the fall, right? And so we always look and see how many students are at core, how many are meeting, right, our expectations. So they actually have the difference between early on grade level is kind of that lighter green, and then mid or at above grade level. So you're seeing those. So I always put them together, right? So we're seeing all of those scores together. And then we have in the middle is one grade level below. So those are kids who are strategic, right? So if I have a first grader, they might be working at a kindergarten level, right? And then the red, too, they're 3 or more grade levels below, as you can see with the difference with the light shade, 2 grade levels below is the light shade, and then 3 or more levels is that one. You can see 1%, as you can see with our fall. So you want to shrink those down, and you want hopefully students are moving from the red to the yellow and the yellow to the green, right? So they're making that progress, and you're seeing this increase, and this is going to decrease if you have good interventions and good instruction.
So this is also, I feel like I'm coaching you. So this is also, these are all the students in the school.
Yes, correct. So to make it simple, right, we just did overall, the whole school. And then as a school too, we break it down by first grade all the way through 5th grade. And then what I love about iReady too, is then you can even see it by domain. So you can see, do they need more support in vocabulary? Do they need comprehension? Do they need phonics? So it breaks it down even more, but we just wanted to give an overview so you could see. And then they have the student numbers down below. So you can even see we have 134 students that are now, when it used to be only 84. So you can even see that. So percentages up top and then the numbers down below. Does that make sense?
And this is strictly based on the iReady.
Yes, this is iReady data. Yep. And then we also have the dibbles, like James mentioned as well. And so we actually, our dibbles to celebrate was our 4th grade. So we had 43% of students at core plus, which is actually above the green into blue. It's another color, I know, with all of our graphs that we love. And they actually went up to 67%. So they almost doubled their scores. And so total 84% are at core, and they're 80% with iReady too. So we're seeing that correlation too, like James was mentioning. So they're fluent readers, and then they're also doing the comprehension, the vocabulary, all those other pieces. So that's great on track, right, for thinking about Smarter Balance that's coming up next month. And so how we achieve that is our core instruction we set as a priority. We have our win time, so what students need, where we provide strategic intervention for students, either if they need vocabulary support or phonics support, whatever. Teachers are meeting with them in small groups. And then also, we have a lot of kiddos who are already at grade level, so how are we going to keep challenging them to making sure they're getting enrichment and all those opportunities too? So we do a lot of choice boards, a lot of student projects and things like that are really geared towards the standards and allowing them to show their understanding too. Our next steps based on that are just to continue using our interventions to look at the data to really understand what skills students need or how to extend it for them. So that's what we're focusing on for ELA. Sorry. For math, so similar graph, right, with iReady, that you can see that we had students that were at 30% down in the fall, so I'm adding the two green together, and we've increased to 54%. And then also looking at our red, we've decreased from 15% to 7% too. So that tells us that our interventions and our instruction is working. Some different things that we did in math are accountable talk moves that we've done, math talks, really making sure students are explaining their understanding, sharing their thinking at that deeper level as well. And then cooperative learning, so practicing that math discourse and working in cooperative groups. All those different pieces are great skill sets for them. Oh, I had to explain the data though. I get a little bit longer. Okay. Thanks, John. And then what we're doing in math too is really looking at common formative assessments. So that way we can really see what students know based on our Envisions curriculum, using exit tickets that teachers are coming up with. And then on iReady too, we're using standards mastery, and it's allowing students to really look at that standard and really see, do they know it in depth, because that's going to help them hopefully with smarter balance too, and really give teachers a better idea of what standards students know and don't know as well. And then for learning environment, John mentioned our MTSS systems, and so we have a great, all of our teachers are using our second step curriculum to making sure that we're hitting all those SEL standards. We have our school-wide expectations with our school and classroom matrices. We have a wonderful positive reward system with our splash tickets. We have our monthly themes of the month that were developed by staff, and this is our 4th year using them. And so this month is perseverance, and so we're doing a Lego challenge for students to build Legos to talk about Earth Day, since we have our hopefully celebration coming up. And then we're also doing a writing challenge too, to persevere and to do that. Again, focusing more on student voice and choice. We started an Otters for Others club to really give back to our community, and they come up with different themes and events that they want to do throughout the month. Our video crew does our morning announcements, and we have a student-led book club as well. So just thinking about next steps is really thinking about how do we support all students at all levels. So creating calm down spaces, think sheets for them to reflect, and buddy classrooms, so if they need a separate space to go into as well. Any questions? Yeah.
I love going after Jessica. We are about the same height too, so it's all set for me over here. All right, let's get over to Discovery. Hi, I'm Delana Halliday, the principal Discovery. And yes, very similar charts, same things. I also added in this one here, which shows where our grade levels are when it comes to performance and growth. And so in reading, most of our grade levels are in the high performance, high growth area. So we're already doing rather well. However, we're also continuing to show growth for our students who need it in ELA. And so, for example, similar numbers and actually Art and Dale, a lot of similar numbers here. In fall, 50% of our students were at or above grade level, and now in the winter that was at 65%. In the fall, 25 students were 2 grade levels below, and now that's down to 13 students from a little while ago, actually. So we know that number is even better now. We have 6 teachers in letters training, and one of our teachers is helping lead in the district with that training. And one of the exciting things as I dug into the data, especially in the areas of phonemic awareness, were that the teachers who were taking that training had the highest scores in those areas. And I checked the numbers. I mean, I made sure that they started with similar levels in the beginning, and that's where we've had the greatest growth. So very exciting to see that in there. We did notice that even though first grade had made some great gains, they were still running about 44%. So we adjusted our staffing to provide more support during our intervention block and time for them. So that way, after looking at data, putting students into groups so we could identify the specific skills they needed, we could have more hands available to help support those students. Oh, I'm moving mine to math. I have to move yours too. All right, so taking a look here at math, again, similar chart here with the iReady information on it. I go down to more specific breakdowns by grade level. I'm not going to read all those to you. I will tell you that some of the things we worked on, we're having learning targets posted in every classroom, specifically in math, so that way students understood the goal of the lesson. When students know where they're going, they have a higher chance of actually getting there. And so we wanted to make sure that was in student-friendly language, easy for students to access and restate. On the next one, in the little statistic right below, was that in the fall, we had 101 students at or above grade level. We're now at 151. So going from 36% to 54%. On the other end of the spectrum, 16% of students were at 2 grade levels or more below, and that's moved to 7%. So that, again, showing that our intervention strategies and plans are working well for our students when we can continue to get that red smaller and the green bigger. One of the things we have coming up is that we will be meeting as a school to look at vertical alignment, specifically around the areas of fluency strategies. Some of our teachers have said, you know, this strategy that these students are learning in younger grades is actually difficult for us to it makes it difficult for us to teach them the next strategy they need in the next grade. So we're going to start looking at the alignment of teaching practices and to see what we can do to refine it. So to get the really powerful strategies that will help carry them all the way through the grades. So that way it's a consistent pattern also for students to learn. And then let's see, tomorrow we're doing professional development with iReady, specifically looking at math and data as we look at ways to develop our groups and use the resources that are in that tool. One fun thing, if students make typical growth, according to iReady, 71% are on target to be proficient on the SBA. That's if they took the test that's based on results from this winter. So if those students continue to make typical growth, 71%. The good thing is, most students, a lot of students actually meet their stretch growth goal, which is even more. So that number is pretty exciting for us to have up there. Learning environment. We love doing things together at Discovery. Including, I put one book, I meant to put The Art of Reading, which was the great project I think I've talked a lot about already that we had in the fall. And to jump us off of that importance of reading and creating opportunities for students to learn about literature in different ways. We have lots of clubs and partnerships. A few of them are our chess club, student council, choir, orchestra, knitting club, Spanish. If a kid is interested, we try to make it happen for them. And along with our students, we have the importance of bringing in our families, because this goes best when we're all working together, and that means building relationships. So we've had movie nights, the magic of reading night, and I have other things out there, but just recently, because I want to make sure I have time to say, we went to the Rainiers game on Sunday. And it was a blast. We had so much fun just being at the ballpark together and enjoying an event. It was absolutely wonderful. We revised our discipline plan, so making sure that we have consistent patterns in the classrooms. And so teacher by teacher, they know what's going to happen if I'm supporting a student, and they can depend on each other to follow a similar pattern when it comes to supporting and responding to student behaviors. That includes intervention strategies and what happens. So when we need to support students. We definitely have our positive reinforcement tickets going. We have our Anchor Award assemblies where teachers nominate students and get to talk about the great things that those students are doing in the classroom and in the school. Great partnership with the communities and schools. We love our partners, you know that. And then we have partnerships with Gig Harbor High School and Henderson Bay, such as Interact. Coming up, we're increasing our supervisor training out on the recess, because that is a place where things happen. And so we're working with our team out there. It's getting better all the time. And then just on the bottom, because we're so excited about the gardening with Henderson Bay, that we're looking forward to this great opportunity to work with our high school students. All right. Any questions? Okay. Oh, yes, Chuck.
I should ask this of Jessica too. Everything looks great, and you're moving along, but there's still a little red.
Mm-hmm.
What do you need that's going to help you along? Do you feel like you have all the tools, all the assessment stuff? Is there? And I know we always need more people.
It's like you read my mind, Chuck. Yeah.
But what is it we can do to help? Is there anything else, any other tools
I think right now, actually, I think time to look at and explore and understand the current tools that we've been provided. We have been provided with a lot of tools recently, especially for our students in student services, and even in our LAP program, or Learning Assistance Program. I think that having an opportunity for professional development for teachers really to dive in and understand that, like the letters training, which is going great. More of that. Let's keep doing that. So right now, I'm almost like, just don't give us too much more right now. Let's see what we've got going. Yeah. Yes. If my peers have other things to say, I know they'll chime in on that one. It's a great question.
Thank you. Too much stuff. All right, I'm Hugh Maxwell, principal at Evergreen Elementary. I think I can see that well enough to talk about it. So as same as Jessica and Alana, we have our iReady information up there, and looking at what growth we're making. Right now with English Language Arts, we're at 70% towards our annual typical growth. So we are on track for all of our grade levels, and that doesn't necessarily mean all students, because that's an average, but we are working hard to make sure that all of those students meet that annual growth. Just a couple ones to point out. You can see 5th grade is like almost off the chart up there. They're currently at 133% towards past typical growth for the year, and they are actually about 85% on their way towards their stretch growth. So that has just been a celebration with them and the work they're doing. Our growth isn't always where we want it to be, but we have a plan, and I'll be talking about that in a little bit. Dibble's 4th grade growth. I checked with James the other day because I was looking at some end of the year growth, or growth that students had been making on Dibbles, and now that it's switched into end of year, I couldn't retain that data. I couldn't get that data again. But we had multiple students, numerous students, probably at least 50%, who had already made 80% growth, or 8 months growth. We had even a few that had made like 15 or 20 months growth in their Dibbles. So we have a lot of students. 4th grade has been a group that we have really focused on the last several years, that had a lot of reading needs, and we have quite a few students who are intensive who have moved up and are, just seems like they've finally, just hit their stride and are making a lot of growth. So that's been a celebration. One of the things that's been exciting to watch is our kinder teachers just having a large variety, with being high poverty. We sometimes see kids that come in that have great home life and lots of support, and we see those that they just don't have that. And, the parents don't always have the skills to also provide that for their students. So our kinder team was seeing a large gap, and you can't do it all yourself, right? That's one of the things that we keep thinking. You cannot do it all yourself. So they just recently started looking at student data, working with each other, finding who has the skill set, and then providing a walk-to model. So we have kids and if kindergartners can do it, anybody can do it, because they have to walk all the way across our building, right? And it's a large building. They get kind of tired. So we've also just recently, thanks to Lisa Ray, we've been able to use a little bit more title support and get a little bit more para support that's just focused on our K-1-2 classrooms, specifically around Dibbles. And we're now putting that para in there, so we are able to spread out, along with our lab teacher, Susan Brummett, who's amazing, and other support. So we're doing that walk-to model with them, and they're being very specific around those early literacy skills. All of them are using the Haggerty. All of them are doing ECRI. So they're using the resources that are provided, and they're just trying to maximize that time and the specific skill that those students are working with. Another success that we have had this year is just our work around oral language development. We know that students from low literacy homes come in with not a lot of language. So we've moved away, not maybe every day, but moved away a lot from one kid raising their hand, answering the question. And I know other buildings do this as well. I know my colleagues really make an emphasis with student talk and talk in turns, mixed parent share. Just kids have to be talking to build that oral language development. So that's been a celebration. I'm just going to hold our next steps for now because I'm going to talk about that a little bit after math as well. So I'm just going to move on to math. Math, coming out of the pandemic has been a real challenge, and we're not necessarily seeing the growth that we want to see, which is going to be part of our next steps. We have been doing, just like Accountable Talks, we've been doing a lot of math talks, which ties right in with our oral language development. And so when I go into classrooms, I see kids talking, teachers having kids paired up and doing lots of conversation around math and explaining their thinking. We've made a commitment to iReady. We do have iReady Math, and we've made a commitment to using that for the 40 minutes a week. That was something that was promoted by the district years ago, and we've continued doing that. And that is helping fill some of those gaps when we have those large gaps within a classroom, students getting that personalized learning. We had the iReady trainer, wonderful trainer, come out on March 15th that morning, worked with our teachers, gave them lots of great ideas, and they are now implementing those ideas on how to get those. We're moving towards that standard-based personalized learning for each student, so the kids are getting just what they need. And right now we're at 66% progress towards annual typical growth, so I'm anticipating with our emphasis on the math talks and the iReady training and what the changes we're making, that we should be able to make that typical growth. So I'm stop for just a second to talk about something that's really exciting for us. We know that our kids are not where we want them to be, right? We know that. But we also know teachers are working, our staff are working so hard that it's just kind of like, wow, how can we work harder? We want to work harder, but maybe we work a little bit smarter. So my success coach and I went to the ESEA conference, also known as the Title I conference, with Lisa Ray and Todd and some other people. And we went to a presentation from Camas Prairie Elementary, which is over in Bethel School District. Similar demographics to us, high poverty, similar challenges. And we thought, well, let's go listen to their presentation because they are last year they were a national distinguished Title I school for 2 years of high growth in a row. And we're like, let's go find out what they're doing. So we went and listened to them. And it's not really necessarily anything new and innovative, but they are doing a Move To model, and they are using very explicitly common formative assessments, essential learning outcomes. So we went, stayed, talked to them afterwards. They invited us over for a visit. So we went over on March 15th with a team, sat in on their PLC, they call them PLTs, PLC groups with each grade level meeting, and just listen to them talk about how explicit they're down to very discrete skills on the common formative assessments, and then how they break the kids up, how they're doing pre-exit tickets. They're assessing every day as they teach that. They also are coming together to talk about the type of instruction they're giving those students, and to ensure that it takes a lot of trust, right, to send your kids to another classroom, to another teacher, when you think, oh, I know what's best for my kids, but they're making it work. They also tied they're tying their common formative assessments and ELAs or ELOs, essential learning outcomes. Sorry, I always use a lot of education jargon, towards a smarter balance assessment. They're using the blueprint. We had some conversation with the principal about that. And our team came back, didn't feel a hint of resistance, right? They're like, yeah, we kind of have done this before when we used to have the reading room at Evergreen. So we are currently planning. We may have even some teams that pilot a little bit this spring with maybe some math and do a couple ELOs. But we're really excited. We're looking at probably just restructuring all of our support and how that can align with, so we're already starting to do our planning for our structure and when those walk-to models are going to happen for each grade level and how we're going to support that. And we're doing some work tomorrow around CFAs and ELOs, and I'm just going to look at how we can maximize our title funding, and we now are back at high poverty status. Woo! So that's going to be some extra funding that we can use. I mean, that sounded bad, but it's not. It means just that the state is back to, we rolled out of those 2 years of really low poverty rates because of all kids getting free lunch. So our data's back up to where we will have some additional funding. And it's just super exciting that we are moving towards this model, and teachers are excited about it. And we're going to be planning, and I'm hoping to maybe use some funding, maybe use teachers' self-directed days during the summer to do some planning around that, and just be ready to hit the road running in the fall. So. And hey, look, our learning environment, we're doing great. Sense of belonging, we're just doing lots of things around inclusion and helping kids feel belonging, that they belong. And one of the things we've been doing is kind of doing some progress monitoring. And the last progress monitoring check we did, we have about 76, so we've gone up from 69 to 76. And if we can hit that, that's the highest sense of belonging we've ever had since I've belonged at Evergreen. So I just want to point out, my success coach is just doing amazing things. She coordinates and collaborates with our communities and schools person, our ECAP family support specialist, our counselor, and that group of people are supporting more students. My success coach is probably working with 60 students in either one-on-one or individual or small groups every week to help kids be successful, because we know if they don't have the skills to learn, then they're not going to learn.
Hugh, before you go, can you just point out, like, what is that chart down there? It's not marked. What is that?
That is from our progress monitoring for sense of belonging. So that this was, I feel like I really belong. I feel like I kind of belong. I somewhat belong. So it's aligned with the learning environment, the sense of belonging questions. And so the 76% was the last check that we did with our students.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, good evening. I'm Allie Shepard, principal at Harbor Heights, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about our ELA data. Similar to my colleagues, I'm showing you our iReady data. This is our winter data. So currently, you'll see 68% of our students are early on grade level, mid-year on grade level. I want to capture another way to look at our data. So this year, we took our students by name and need and placed them on our elementary reading pathways. That's a document provided to us from our teaching and learning, our MTSS hub, and really using those district resources and placing kids on the pathway so that we know where they are and what they need. I want to point out that in the fall, this was only grades 1 through 5 due to when we start doing DIBELS testing. So when you look at winter, there are more kids on this graph, and you'll see some of the data, it just doesn't add up. That's because this data includes our kindergartners. So while you'll see 48 students were in the red intensive in the fall, that's not all the same 48 kids here in the winter. A bulk of those are some of our kindergartners. So what I want to say about our growth at Harbor Heights is that students are growing, and they're growing in wonderful rates. So I want to celebrate some of our work at grade 3. 83% of our students are at benchmark on our Ready Reading. At grade 4, 80% of our students are on benchmark for iReady. 70% of our students are meeting benchmark for the K-5 DIBELS winter assessment. And how did we get there? Well, we used that guaranteed and viable curriculum that we are given by our district, and then we have been using our our late start and our CDUB PLD time to dig into what those resources are, how we use them, which kids we use them with, and then monitor the progress of those students. Another really big, powerful lift and exciting time is to have 5 of our teachers in letters training. They're already coming back and speaking with their colleagues about how amazing this training is. It's a lot of work. Our teachers are digging in. They're giving a lot of time and energy to this, but we are seeing remarkable results in the classrooms where those teachers are going through that training and how they are making improvements for their students. I do want to point out that one of my colleagues had mentioned that if our students just maintained this level of growth, we'd be at 71% on the SBA. If they reach their stretch growth, we're at like their targeted growth would be 77, and their stretch growth would be like 82% of students passing the SBA when we get there next month. So that's a little bit about reading. And for math, similarly, all students are growing. Oops, it toggled back. All students are growing at Harbor Heights. I want to celebrate that we have some grade levels where there are 0% of students in that 3 or more grade levels below. That's important. That's impactful because we can't intervene our way out of this. You asked that question, Chuck. So when we see students moving out of red into yellow or strategic into green and the hashtag or whatever that is, the hashed green, that's student performance, right? And that's educational equity in action. So how do we get there? Really focusing on learning objectives, teachers posting the learning target, saying the learning target, and then matching those tasks in the classroom to that target. We use the Envisions curriculum, and we also have some grades that are starting like a math workshop. So they will find the students that need that additional dose of support or a check-in during the core math time and intervene right there during math block. And we're excited. Tomorrow as a staff, we get to have our time with the iReady trainer to dig into standards mastery and some of those tools to increase math performance even further at Harbor Heights. And what are we proud of? Well, we really focused this year on proactive and preventative systems. So what does that look like? That's our second step curriculum. It's having a common positive behavioral intervention support model across our building. You'll see our Orca Way listed, posters of what that looks like. Students are getting reinforced with splash tickets when they are following the Orca Way. We celebrate that and honor that during our Word of the Month, digging into some of the character traits that will serve you long, as a lifelong learner: perseverance, honesty, cooperation. The word of the month right now is courage. So really building that sense of belonging intentionally in our school building. We have a Sense of Belonging Club that is actually publishing a school newspaper at the end of this year. That's students in grades 2 through 5 who wanted to opt in at a club during their recess. Maybe recess isn't their favorite time, so they get to engage in something that they find meaningful and engaging. We have an Enviro Club led by Mrs. Dower, who you just saw get her National Board Certification in Science. She leads that. We have our Kindness Pod, which leads school-wide projects at our school. And then we have Inclusive Sports led by our occupational therapist and our intermediate options teacher, where we have students that play sports after school, no matter their ability. And then lastly, go Orcas. We have a lot of positive reinforcement and just joy in our hallways. You'll see student learning posted, student projects posted in our hallways, and we celebrate students for working hard and learning hard too. Our BLT has been engaged in the 6-week continuous cycle of looking at our SIP plan, looking at what we've set as a goal, what do we want to revise or edit or add on, and then just adjust those supports and practices. Lastly, we are really, really proud of our MTSS systems at Harbor Heights. We have a strong student care team. The leadership team at our school has focused on kids that really are of the most need and making sure we have wraparound supports for them. So without getting too much into what that plan looks like, I just want you to know we have a strong, powerful, positive environment at our school, and our intention is to have our kids finish strong. So thank you for your support tonight. And do you have any questions for me? I know I spoke quickly. I was trying to meet that 5-minute. You tell me to do something, I'm going to do it. So I think I did that in 5 minutes. Yes.
When is your walk, run, roll-a-thon?
Run and roll a mile.
Yeah.
It is May 20, whatever that Tuesday is, May 26 or 28.
Okay, so we have some time.
Yes, I'll make sure you get a calendar invite.
Thank
you bet. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Winter Creek.
Good evening. I'm Todd Herring, principal of Minter Creek. I'm going to keep my own time. If I can figure out how to, there we go. So, no, we've been told we might get yanked off stage if we go a little too long. So to save myself that embarrassment. So as you're looking up here, starting with ELA, as you can see, similar graphs. We've got where we are now compared to where we were. A couple of the huge successes, that lower left, it shows that, sorry, I'll get out of your way. It shows the high growth versus and high performance, and all but one grade level are in both, which is obviously what you want. And the one that isn't is super close, but still showing that high performance. So that's huge for us. Also, looking at the 2+ grade levels below, decreased significantly, went from 23% down to 13%. And as all of my colleagues and James so eloquently put, we expect those trends to continue. So again, making the green bigger and the red smaller. Some next steps, we took our entire LAP team, including all of our paras, to the ESEA conference along with Lisa and Evergreen, and got a lot of great information there. So they're not just implementing it into our title program, but also sharing with staff, sharing with doing a lot of those walk-tos. So we're setting up in, I believe, 4 out of our 6 grades are all doing some type of a walk-to where they divide them into smaller groups using our title time, using our win time, and really isolating those key things and focusing on those in the small group instruction. So it's 4 or 5 students at a time with a trained educator. Typically, those who are strongest will have those who are kind of our intensive group, all the way up to those who are at or above grade level, because like it was mentioned before, we want them growing as well. So they will typically be with some of our paraeducators who are extremely talented as well. And so we have great people working with all of our students. 6 of our teachers are in letters training. We have 3 grade levels that are doing it, which is awesome. Or excuse me, 2, and then half of 1, and also our title teacher. And then continuing to progress monitor and making sure those win groups are accurate and getting what they need. So about every 6 to 8 weeks, re-looking at the data, shuffling kiddos around as needed. Sometimes those groups stay the same, sometimes come in and out. Just really, again, what our students need. And then continuing our SBA interim assessments. So not teaching to the test, but also helping our students understand what the test is. So when they get to that test, they're not just freaking out like, oh, I've never seen this before. There is some learning on that. And so we do have to take some time to equip our students, but also show them, here's what it is, here's what we're missing. A lot of that information comes off of those interim assessments to help prepare our students for what they're going to come up with. Like one of our colleagues said, in just a month. It's hard to believe we're already here. So looking at math, again, the charts are up there. You can see our green got a whole lot bigger. And that's not just because the bar is thicker. But so on and above numbers doubled, which is huge in just that short amount of time. And again, we anticipate seeing those numbers grow again. And then our red got significantly smaller, which again is the trend we want to see. A lot of what we've been working on is math talks to improve that number sense. If kids don't understand what numbers are, it's going to be really hard to do math. And so that's one area that we've found a lot is number sense is really struggling with our students. So that's an area that we've helped use math talks to target that. And so we're going to continue to increase those and also, like I said, to improve that number sense. Somehow I have up here SBA interim assessments twice. Apparently it's really important to us. And also one thing that we started this year was title math. We've had title reading for a lot of years. Tried to start title math right before the pandemic hit. Was not a good time to make some changes. And then we found we got to really focus on reading again. And so now we're at a point where we can start really focusing on that math. So we got an additional title para to come in and work strictly with some pullouts and some also push-ins depending on what the students needed to do some of those math. And we're already seeing benefits on that. I believe we're about 8 weeks in on that one. And like I said, already showing some gains on that title math. Then as we move to our last slide of learning environment, you can see the trend continuing up, 64%. Imagine that not feeling like they really belong when they were on the computer at home, but continuing to climb back up. And if you look at the question itself, there's 4 or 5 questions on the Panorama survey that go towards sense of belonging. But the one that specifically says, do you belong at your school? We're at 79%, which was an increase of 5%. And so we anticipate continuing to see that from things that we're doing. Kids at Hope, it's all about hope and connecting students with each other, connecting students with adults, and connecting with our school. you don't belong if you don't feel connected to all of those. We've got a few clubs, just some highlights there. Yo-Yo Club, Green Team, which is our environmental team. They do a lot of recycling, things like that. And then our Kindness Club. We can go into a lot of those later. They're amazing. But we're also including D&D Club, just trying to hit all the different needs that our students are seeing. And then our Dolphin Tales, that is actually spelled correctly because every kid has a tale of what they get it for. And when they put it in the dolphin tank, they've got to explain what they did to get that reward. So it really builds that up, builds that communication, and they tear it in half, put one in the tank, take the other half home to show and celebrate with their families. And so anyway, we're growing. We can see it in every area, and that's what we're all about. Not just performance, which is important, but how are we growing both our students who are well below and well above, and also right where they should be. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Herring.
You are welcome.
All right, I got a timer too. We'll see. I'll just say ditto and then I win, right? Good evening, Stephanie Strader, the very proud principal here at Pioneer. I enjoy these nights listening to my colleagues. There's so many, we collaborate so frequently, and there's so many things that we are doing that are consistent, and it's really, really amazing to see that through line across all of our 10 elementary schools. So I'll try to focus my conversation today on things that maybe are unique to Pioneer, but we are continuing to do ECRI, Haggerty, and all of those things that are making a contribution. One success I'd like to highlight is that from fall to winter, we've already shown a 20 percentage point gain in our iReady reading, demonstrating 71% of our students are at reading proficiency already this year, kindergarten through 5th grade. Our kindergartners do participate as well. So I'm extremely proud of that. I think a lot of that time and energy and effort that we've spent diving into the Scarborough's reading rope and what are those components of structured literacy and how are those reflected in our instructional program have been instrumental into the progress that we've made. So we are, structured in terms of our strategic core instruction around phonemic awareness. We use Haggerty, ECRI for phonics instruction, making sure that those are really solid practices. But then how do you make meaning from the learning that we're experiencing? And that's happening in our project-based learning units. And it's evident that our students are really capturing that holistic approach to reading and are demonstrating success. Something that we started this year as well would be progress monitoring our students using DIBELS. So we made a commitment at the beginning of the year to progress monitor all Tier 2 and all Tier 3 students, depending on what their predominant measure is in DIBELS. So either that's oral reading fluency or it could be nonsense word fluency, depending on the grade band. And that's really allowed us to take a holistic look at our students and really dive into what is it that they need. Right now we're looking at some interesting data with some of our 2nd and 3rd graders where they're not quite where they need to be in nonsense word fluency, but their oral reading fluency is off the charts. And so we're having lots of intellectual conversations amongst each other, especially those that are participating in letters training about what does letters say about that. I think it's time that we drop that nonsense word focus because they're making meaning from what they're reading and it shows. And so we're having lots of conversations around that. 10 of my teachers signed up for the letters training and I'm loving leaning into that. I'm not able to participate in the same training that they are, but learning from them, hearing from them in terms of what is making a change in their practice has been pretty impactful. For us, we're still looking at those Tier 2 and Tier 3 kiddos and trying to understand them as unique, human, individual little people. Their struggles could be anything from hearing, it could be vision, it could be behavior, it could be they're missing that phonemic awareness piece, so we need to increase that oral language. So really, who are those kiddos in front of us, and then what are those tools that we need to take a look at to give us the tools to be able to better intervene to continue to close that gap. Oop, wrong way. There we go. Okay, so for math, again, continued growth for our students. You'll see our greens are getting larger and our yellows and reds are substantially decreasing. We made a commitment this year to focus on math. Of course, we have to continue with our ELA and reading focus, but math has been a big focus for us. And one thing that we've done this year is implemented number talks across K-5 classrooms. Common language, common strategies. If you go in any one of our classrooms, there's common nonverbal signs. So you'll see kids doing this to say me too, or I disagree with you. So that's been pretty powerful to have some of that consistency across. We've also done a lot of work to identify our power standards and look at the K-5 continuum of that. So if we're looking at numbers and operations in kindergarten, what is that one thing? And we have to teach a lot of things, but what is that one essential thing that if they do not leave kindergarten mastering that, they're going to struggle in second, they're going to struggle in fourth, they're going to struggle in fifth. And so we've done a lot of work this year. Now we're adding a layer to that to say, okay, now if these are the power standards that we have, what are we going to do to assess their progress with that? So relying on some tools that we already have, like the iReady Standards Mastery is a really great tool to get some of that rigor too in there for our students. So moving forward, I think using common formative assessments to continue to guide our work for students is a priority for us as we're looking at math and continuing that work. We also have some of our classrooms split for math. So in our multi-age model, some of our classrooms will do like a walk-to where kindergartners go to one class, first graders go to other. And then there's a small cohort that are still holding out to that multi-age math. And it's been really great looking at the data between the two. And there's pros and cons to both. And we see that our students are growing in both models because we're able to have consistent routines and procedures. We're deeply versed in our standards, and we know where we want our students to go. And sense of belonging at Pioneer, it's interesting. Unfortunately, I cut off the years on that. I think the high point there was the fall we came back to in-person learning. So I think the 73 was that fall of, or the summer maybe of 2020. I don't remember exactly, but one of those we always joke about, like the kids were so excited to just be here because we were just back in person. So it's an interesting trend. We have grown in our population of students over the last 4 years. We doubled that second year. This year we are pretty stable. I think going into the fall of 2024, we're just welcoming in our 84 kindergartners. So it'll be interesting kind of to see how that change and progresses. I think Todd mentioned earlier that I chose to select some of the questions regarding sense of belonging because we're really leaning into what those are, particularly that first one, which says, how well do people at your school understand you as a person? I have a 4th grade daughter at Pioneer, and she took the panorama the other day, and just the conversation she had around that was eye-opening for me personally, just in terms of her mom and then also a teacher. And yeah, it makes me want to talk to more kids about what does that mean to them? So that's an area that we're continuing to talk about as a staff as well. But we're growing in these areas because some of those words that you see there, morning meeting is something that we established this year. We have a common protocol. We understand why we do morning meeting, what is the purpose behind it. We share resources and tools. The first 5 minutes of every collaboration Wednesday, staff members take 5 minutes to send a quick positive message home to parents. Hey, I want to let you know about Johnny today or Maria today. And that's been really well received. And then ultimately too, a lot of our philosophy around our learning environment goes down to that instructional design, that universal design for learning. As we're designing our project-based learning units, we're really thinking about that high ceiling, low floor, and every student in between to make sure that we have diverse perspectives, diverse resources to ensure every student has access to what it is that we're trying to get them to accomplish. So that's Pioneer. Any questions?
I'm just curious, you mentioned the nonsense words, and I have a recollection of kind of learning about that kind of through my own child. Can you speak a little bit more about can you just talk to that a little bit more is that something that students are assessed on, or is that something that is like a technique, as a teaching technique?
Both. So Dibbles has students test nonsense word fluency kindergarten and into 1st grade and into it's into fall of 2nd grade through that as well. And so a nonsense word could be something like, Zon, Z-O-N. So a nonsense word fluency assessment helps us to see, can students apply their phonics knowledge to words that don't make sense in context. And so it's just another tool for us to be able to see, are they able to progress along in that phonics instruction. Now, I think there does become a point, though, where those nonsense words no longer make sense. And so that student has then a barrier because, well, I can read these words when they make sense in context. But when you're asking me to apply it here, I mean, it's kind of a wonky assessment, too, because they have to sound out the sounds first, and then they have to blend it to read the words. So it would be z, ah, n, zon. And so if they miss any one part of that, that affects, you know, their score into that. But it is, we use it as a tool to apply, you know, phonics strategies, but then to assess their fluency with being able to apply some of those phonics strategies as well. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, school board and everyone. It's great to hear my colleagues as well. I would have to echo Stephanie and say it's great to be a part of this great team, and also to hear all of the growth and success our schools and students are having that people may not always hear about. So I'm excited to be here. I'm going to turn it to Purdy. So I added our Dibbles data as well as our iReady data. So I'm gonna scoot back here, and we've had a lot of growth. We're really excited about some of the things we've been doing with the arts, as well as literacy, math, and STEAM and STREAM. For iReady, we've seen our students increase from 50% to 70%, which is quite high growth. So we're really excited about that for all of our students. But also our REDs, you'll see, went from 11 to 5%. So we're seeing a big decrease in our strategic students. And then for Dibbles, we continue to progress monitor our students every 2 weeks, like Stephanie was talking about, and that really helps us target the kids that need that intensive help. So sometimes we'll take our lab teacher or extra support staff, which are essential to the success for these kiddos, and we'll do some preview of some of the words that they're doing in ECRI and phonics in the classroom. So when they go into the classroom, they already know those sounds, so they're not feeling behind. They're actually successful when they're in the gen ed class with the rest of their peers. We also can identify when the kids need additional support. Maybe they need review, so our lab staff and teachers are also really helpful with that. So in our on March 29th, we progress monitored again, and you can see the data that our kindergarten students, we have 96% of our students at standard as of March 29th on Dibbles. Really successful. And then first grade 91%, second grade 89%. And you can see the numbers, but what we've noticed is since we've been using ECRI after COVID and been consistent with our win time and our walk to model, that those foundational skills that have been passed on from kindergarten to first grade to second grade have helped that growth continue throughout those grade levels. And that's why we feel like our K2 students especially are so strong, and we're seeing that growth. And it's really been exciting to see. We're really proud. We used this model when we were looking at our data with our staff on what do you notice different in the data, what factors have contributed to the change, and what do you think our next step should be. And that's been a really successful model for our staff to look at. And we're really excited about the change we're seeing. We also really feel it's important to incorporate our families and community in helping our students grow. And so right now we're doing a 1,000-minute bubble challenge for kids. They read 1,000 minutes, they can go to a bubble party. They also have a chance, working with the Kiwanis, we've got 2 bikes donated so they could win 2 bikes. So not only are we celebrating reading at school, we're celebrating at home and with our families, because we know that's where our partnership's so essential for our kids and our school. Okay, on to math. So for math, we have our iReady growth up there. You can see we're continuing to make high growth as well. And we're also seeing our REDs decrease. I think I'm most proud of the decrease in the REDs because these are end of year standards from 13% down to just 5%. So we're seeing consistent improvement in all of our grade levels. One thing I'm so proud of is we have a lot of teacher leaders in our building. So we were trying to figure out what are we going to do to focus on math for professional development, because we're spending a lot of time on reading, which is also really important, but we know math is as well. So some of our teacher leaders did some professional development on what they had learned in TDG and other areas. And so we're talking about some of those math norms I put on there for you. Having students, you've heard of my colleagues talk about too, students talking about their thinking in math, showing it, trying to solve it using different multiple strategies, not just one way. Using a growth mindset. It's okay to have the wrong answer. If you do, what'd you get and why? Talking about it. And those things are really important to the growth for our students. We've also started supporting students in a small group in mathematics as well, because not just reading, we know math's really important too. So I would say one of the most contributing factors also is what we do for math review. Each week, our teachers are doing a common formative assessment at that grade level. They do daily math review on 5 essential skills, very targeted, and then they know exactly what the students need to work on. They look at that data and they adjust their teaching each week on that. So that's been really successful as well. And lastly, our learning environment. You can see that we've really been focused on sense of belonging. I think we were surprised when our scores had gone down and wondered why. We do know we have programs come in and out of our school, and that's been an adjustment for our students and staff. But when we get new students that come in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade for PACE, we want to make sure they feel like they belong at our school. Changing schools can be a challenge to make new friends, changing communities. And so what we decided to do as a staff is to ask the students. We did some street data on, do you feel like you belong at school, at our school? If not, why? What do you think we can do? And we got a lot of great information from them. And what they recommended is having students recognize students. We give Panther Paws from staff to kids, but they said, well, why can't kids do that for kids? And don't they have the best ideas sometimes, our kids? And so we started doing a Golden Panther Paw, and students were giving students Panther Paws, and they had to write why. And even for our little ones, they're still writing it. And so we announce them on the intercom, we share them at lunch, we have them posted on our walls as well. And I'm just inspired by what the kids share. They're sharing about, thank you for helping me with fractions, for being kind to me, for listening to the teacher. It's just really been inspiring. So you can see our sense of belonging has gone up, and we're going to continue to focus on talking with our kids. How can we get better? How can we help kids belong? And then also, we've noticed that through the arts, through performance, through dance, we've done a talent show, we're doing a play, Cinderella. Kids have gotten more confident. We've seen that. They're getting on stage. We're using performance through ELA. Kids are learning through performance and understanding better. And we really just are excited about being at our school, about helping our kids and our community, and really grateful for the opportunity to be here. Any questions? Okay, thank you. June 6th, our Arts Around the World event. You've got to come. The other Brooks.
Thank you, Mrs. Brooks. Superintendent Barr, members of the board. I'm David Brooks, principal at Swiftwater. We love this school. Tonight, just wanted to share, let's see, maybe share some slides with you first. Okay, there we go. As you look at our Ready data, just like at other schools, we're looking at how do we move kids forward. And we're really excited about looking at where we were started in the fall in terms of, close to 14% of our kids 2 or 3 years below that standard, and reducing that by half. But what we do know is that, yes, kids are going to grow, but we know that kids need to make those kids that are still below grade level standard need to make stretch growth to meet that standard at the end of the year. So yes, the numbers look good, but we want to figure out how do we support kids to make that stretch growth so they do reach end of the year standard. And that's the challenge for us. We're excited about the growth we've seen. Our team, our multi-tiered systems of support team, as a new school, that was a new team for us in terms of coming together for our academic support as well as social emotional learning. We've focused on using our Peninsula School District reading pathways to align that with our school support systems and our student care team process, to align those so that our assessment data and our work together in collaboration is aligned and moving in a common direction, so that we've got information from individual teachers with kids to a classroom to a grade level to a whole school. Our letters team, we have 12 teachers, resource teacher, lab teacher, every grade level. Almost all of our primary are participating, and they meet every Monday as from 4 to 5 to do work on their lessons, and it's anywhere from 5 to 8 people that make it when they can. And it's just been a powerful learning experience, and just want to say that's been so powerful for our district. But it is a huge commitment for teachers. It's 80 hours of work over the year, and it is really deep. So I just want to say thank you for supporting that and continuing that work. We're also learning that for our 3rd through 5th grade, our teachers also want that same deep knowledge of foundational skills piece. How do we support kids that are struggling in 3rd through 5th grade? And one of the things that we really appreciate was our professional learning days, March 15th. We just had a powerful connection with teachers, being able to dig back into, review our dyslexia law information in the morning, dig deeper into some of that learning that was provided 2 years ago to 3rd through 5th grade in an afternoon or a day that the primary teachers had probably 6 Wednesdays worth of training on during COVID. So it's just, we need to figure out how do we support all of our teachers. Our teachers are looking at the intervention materials that we have from our district, Phonics for Learning, and they got to take a deeper dive into that. Our lab teacher jumped in, helped give them some background in terms of what's it look like in our win time, and we had some teachers come watch her deliver that, and we're working at how do we do that in our own classrooms. So just important learning for us with reading. I'm going to jump on to math just because thinking about time. Math is that other area in terms of how do we move forward, and yes, the slide would be great too. I've got the slide on my paper. We are, well, there we go. Thank you. Sorry about that. For math, we are focusing on our Tier 1 intervention for all kids, and that's incorporating the math talks you've heard my colleagues talk about into part of that Envision lesson, which kicks off a lesson with Pose the Problem. It's a kind of real-world question for kids to solve, and it's that how do we get kids thinking about math, not just as routines of this is how the steps you take to solve a problem, but to think about that critical thinking and include that problem solving and talking about different strategies that we use. We did a fall iReady training to help support and look forward. Our continued work is continuing figuring out what are those assessments that we can use to help get kids to meet those stretch goals, especially in math. And that's our work across math and reading, is looking at how do we intervene for kids that need that support. And like reading, we also are excited about our kids that on iReady were below grade level and reducing that by winter. And again, as we look towards spring, we know we have to look at interventions that help kids meet those stretch goals, not just typical growth to get to that standard. And I will click the slide to learning environment. Being a new school, this is our 3rd year in. we started out at 391 students this year. Right now we have 530. So figuring out how do we create that environment that welcomes everyone so you feel included is continual work in progress. Our vision, we keep coming back to that, is that we are a welcoming community of learners. We want our kids to feel empowered and inspired to lead, innovate, and dream. And I would just say, if you, we're really proud of an event we did this past week. It was at Heron's Key. We've been growing this partnership with Heron's Key. Actually brought a busload of residents at our grand opening. When we opened, we talked about how do we get volunteers to come in and support reading. Last year with our Peninsula Reads, we had a good crew of readers come. This year that continued on. We've got 13 Heron's Key residents that come every single week, at least once a week, and are doing either a book study, working with kids. It's just a great community connection. And with that, we had 5 students, well, we actually had 65 students that went and sang for them, did a little 20-minute concert. We have 65 students in our choir, Swiftwater Sensationals. They meet every Tuesday morning at 8. And so it is a commitment, but it is one of those ways that people feel connected. And our residents next door love that. We also had 5 students that spoke about our mission in terms of what it is that we want. It's kind of that pathway for kids to reach our vision. And we had them talk about being risk takers, problem solvers, community caretakers, innovators who wonder and create, and students that are inclusive and valuing different perspectives. So we had 5 students talk about that. And it was just amazing to hear our kids talk so eloquently about what it is about our school that makes us a welcoming community. And the questions that the Heron's Key residents had were awesome. And it's just like, I'm sitting there like, okay, how would I answer that? And the kids did a great job. And it was just really neat. So in terms of welcoming environment, we're trying to grow those activities, just like choir. We did add a play this year, thanks to some community support. We're adding what we called our Glow and Grow. We did a celebration for our goals from our student conferences. We had every student did 3 glows and a grow, like a growth goal, something I'll work towards. And so we did a big dance party at lunch with glow sticks and flashing lights. It was really fun. And if time is up, follow-up is just kids can bring that back and report back to that. And so we have some of that accountability talk. Thank you very much. And on to Vaughn. Oh, questions?
Thanks for that arrow. Good evening. Thanks for having me back tonight. I felt like I was just here. So I'm actually going to do something a little bit differently. I'm going to skip to my learning environment slide because I have a really strong belief in our students and the whole child. And so it really has to start here. The environment they walk into, when they enter the door, who's going to greet them, who's going to talk to them, that builds that. And so like right now, when you think about Vaughn, I heard a parent say it earlier, our month of belonging was amazing. But it's not just the month of belonging, it's the idea that every day, every child, our students belong. And so at Vaughn, what we've been really working on this year is talking about our students and what they need. So our celebrations are those clearly defined guidelines for success. In the past, we've always said we're respectful, responsible, safe, but now we can define it. Because I want to be able to ask a kindergartner what respectful means, and I want a 5th grader to tell me the same thing, and they can now. It's amazing. And I also have kindergartners that say, I'll see you on the screen, Miss Barabee, talking about respectful, because we do Zoom announcements. We're all together in the morning doing the work. This year, our teachers got together at BLT and really fine-tuned our second step curriculum to make sure when we talk about empathy, when we're talking about the steps to solve a problem, that every single grade level is saying it at the same time. We do bullying prevention units in every grade. We do them cohesively, so kids are talking the same, using the same language. And then our Tier 1 systems are explicitly taught, and they're retaught after each break. And when I say retaught, like when they come back from spring break, they're gonna learn how to use the bathroom again, because you'd be shocked at there were crayons in the bathroom today. They forget. And so we come back and we do it. But we don't do it with the teacher. We do it with the teacher and the PE teacher. We do it with the PE teacher and the recess supervisor. So everybody, again, is talking to kids, same language, same time, same words. The really cool part, though, is that the month of belonging was fantastic, and I cannot speak enough about my communities and schools person who put that together and spearheaded that. But, oh, I'm that boring? It put me to sleep? Yeah? I'll keep going. But you have that beautiful tree up. But we move from month of belonging right into March Madness, because we know that if we just stop talking about it, it's not as prevalent, it's not there. So the other picture you'll see is our rainbow walk right now, which is our March Madness, where we focus on a different skill, a different topic. Every month we're all saying the same thing. The data that I have up here really focuses around that sense of belonging, because that's our SIP goal. So Panorama provides me with tons of data, but we had to fine tune it. And so when we talk about the questions that the sense of belonging asks on Panorama, these are your 4 questions. What you'll see is our fall data, 68% responded favorably, saying they feel like people at their school understand them. Right after the month of belonging, we asked the kids the same question, and we had an increase of 4.2%. We just finished it. I tried to get James to get me the data today, but it was real time, and my 5th grade teachers just weren't done, so I couldn't give you real time data, but we did have a huge increase right after that month of belonging. You'll see here how much support do adults in your school give you. This is a really strong one for my kiddos. We had an increase there. How much respect do students at school give you? This has continued to be a Vaughan issue for that student to student, peer to peer, they struggle. And then overall, you can see our sense of belonging went up. So this is really exciting, because something that we've been doing as part of our EDI work as a district is talking about student voice. And we hear a lot of student voice in the high school, and we have to figure out what that looks like in kindergarten, 1st through 5th grade. This is an area that we chose to focus on, and so we're gonna have a student voice group and talking to kids in a Socratic seminar. So there's kids in the middle and kids on the outside. Is what does respect at school look like from a friend? And we're looking at those kids who are furthest from the pain. I'm really tired. I'm a little hangry right now too. Furthest from the pain, closest. No, somebody help me right now. I'm saying it wrong. Furthest from the pain, closest to the power. Furthest from the pain. Okay, anyways. It's the kids who we don't hear enough from. Okay, so if we're talking about kids who are respect to respect, I'm not looking at the kid who maybe been referred for bullying, because he is the one that maybe is disrespectful. But who's standing by and watching that happen? Those are the voices I want to hear. So that's really exciting. Kids need this before they can do the rest of it, right? So now let's go back to not Voyager. You're doing wonderful, Katya. English language arts. You've seen it all. This data right here is so powerful for me. This quadrant talks about high performance, high growth. I live, I breathe here. I want to see this. I want to see high growth. My 2nd graders aren't in the high performance area, but they have made significant amount of growth this year, and it is so powerful. We're really reducing our reds like they've talked about. We're bringing those students who are well beyond grade level. These students are seeing a lab teacher, a title teacher in a small group, and then they're going back and they're seeing their actual teacher in a small group, and that title teacher and their gen ed teacher are talking. They're continually talking about what they need. They're progress monitoring together. Win groups in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade actually go on for an hour. We have hour blocks versus what is recommended, which is 30, because I want them to leave 2nd grade reading. So when they go to 3rd grade, that's not the struggle. They're not struggling to decode the words and worry about that. K through 2 has that laser-like focus on foundational skills. You hear it, you see it. ECRI was amazing. You will hear my teacher say, I can't believe this. I didn't believe in it. Now it's amazing. And they do it, and they do it really well. In fact, right now, my teachers are doing ECRI implementation by going and observing their colleagues. So I was with 2 different teachers today as my instructional coach was teaching in their classroom. We were sitting down looking at their colleague teaching ECRI and going, why did they do that? What did that mean? That was amazing. This goes back to that collective efficacy work when we talk about things are better when you do it together. And they can't do it together if they just talk. They have to actually see it in action, right? And then the letters learning that our teachers are doing. I have 7 teachers currently doing letters, and I have our amazing Cindy Teal, who travels out in the Key Peninsula to all the schools, is one of the letters trainers. And we have letters check-ins. So we've committed as a team that every unit we're going to get together and really talk about what our commitments are. Tomorrow, we had to reschedule it, but we're doing our Unit 3 check-in. What are we learning? What are we committing to? What are some of the things? Down to how do I use my hand when I decode like those nonsense words like Zon? As a teacher, am I using the same cue for every kid as they go through the grade levels? Because if they see it one way in kindergarten and they see it another way in first grade, it's confusing, and let's just take that away from them. Especially when you have multilingual learners like we do, you have to keep it consistent. 80% growth from fall to winter. If we think about iReady, right now, when we took that winter's test, we were about 60% of the way through the school year, so 60% would have been accurate. So we're at 80%, which means our kids have not only met their typical growth, but some of them are already at their stretch. Math. Okay, he told me to wrap it up. Math, we're gonna work through that. We got a lot of work to do. It's really not that exciting right now, but it's going to get exciting at Vaughn because we have focused on math this course like everyone else, but specifically having instructional routines focused on number sense. Every grade level committed to the same instructional routine. They have a common commitment from turn and talks to 3-act tasks, true or false, math talks, number strings. It's amazing. Okay, gotcha. No questions.
Yeah.
That's great.
All right. Feels a little weird to go at the end when you've heard the same story like 8 times. So I'm going to try and make it as interesting for you as possible. I'm Katya Rumeli, principal at Voyager Elementary, and excited to share some data with you tonight. First is our ELA data, and just like my colleagues before, we have seen great growth in our iReady overall increase from the fall to the winter. It's actually pretty cool to see that we have 67% right now that are either at or above grade level across grades K through 5. I wanted to include the DIBELTS data below, and specifically our first grade data. In the fall, our first graders were struggling. Our first graders did not do well. They ended pretty strong in kindergarten, but came in rather weak in first grade. So they've grown pretty significantly from the fall to the winter. And that's pretty amazing. Our first grade team has worked really hard on being consistent with ECRI. We have several teachers who are doing the letters training, and there's a lot of collaboration in that first grade team, and it shows, and I'm really proud of that piece. Some other things that we've done this from the fall to the winter half of the year, we've really been intentional about our data talks. Voyager has not always been really good about having teachers look at data and talk about data. Sometimes that's uncomfortable, so we have been really intentional about everybody talks about data. Every time your team gets together, we're going to talk about data. And we're talking specifically about literacy data. That's been really powerful. We've modeled that as a BLT team, and then grade levels are doing that every week. We had our Voyager Reads and Writes, 10 weeks plus a bonus week, and that was exciting and fun and created a lot of positive energy amongst staff and students and families, so that was really cool. Our 5th grade team is a really great example for what a win time across the grade level can look like. They do a walk-to model with all of their 5th graders. They do frequently rechecking. They change their strategies. They look for interventions. It's really pretty cool to see that happening every day. And just like last year, I shared this with you. We picked our top
10 kindergarten students that were struggling, because we really wanted for them from the very beginning in kindergarten, we wanted them to have that support so that they can grow into strong first graders. That did not really happen for some of those kindergartners last year when we saw them again in the fall. So we are really intentional again this year with those top 10 students, and working a little bit differently, working a little bit harder with those kiddos to make sure that when they do go into first grade, that looks different. I already shared with you that our first grade had some great growth. We are, just like somebody shared, the Reading Pathways document has an incredible amount of interventions tied to it, and so our staff is working on piloting some of those interventions, especially in the upper grades. So our 3rd through 5th grade teachers have felt for a long time that there really isn't anything that they can do or that they can use as an intervention. So it's been really neat to see some of those interventions that have become available to them, and so that they're piloting that. We're continuing to look at the 90 minutes and the win time. What does that look like across all grade levels? And some grade levels are dipping their toes into progress monitoring. I'm going to shift over to math. Again, we have the iReady growth data, and although math is not necessarily a strong focus, we're so hyper-focused on literacy, we still realize quite a bit of growth there. The bottom chart you've seen from some other schools, we have 2 grade levels that really realize some pretty high growth and high performance. Those were our first graders, actually, again, and our 4th graders. So our first grade is rocking it this year across both areas. Some of the things that we've done are we are intentional about doing accountable math talk across all grades. Our 4th grade data speaks really strong to the focus that team has put on fluency, fact fluency. So we've had tremendous growth from the fall to the winter for those kiddos. And then all of our students are participating in Reflex and Frax, and that's an online fact fluency program. What are we focusing on for the remainder of the year? We really are looking at what do number talks look like. That was something that had come through district channels several years ago, but we have new staff and different kids, and so we're revisiting what does that look like. Math games, how can we use those to really build that fact fluency? And then we really would love to incorporate fact fluency as a school-wide goal into our SIP plan next year. Learning environment, I am running out of time, so I'm going to do that really quickly for you. In the fall, we had 74% of our students who said that they answered favorably to the question that asked them about their sense of belonging. Specifically, we noticed less favorable responses in the area of disrespect. So we did a survey with our older students, actually even with the younger students. That was a verbal survey and then a written survey, and you can see the example on there. What does disrespect mean to you, and what does that look like at Voyager? We found that a lot of disrespect happens on the bus and at recess. And so our PBIS team has spent some time working with our older students. What can we do? How can we fix that? They've come up with some great solutions. Our PTA is on board to support some of those solutions in terms of how can we be flexible with recess and how can that look different. So we're looking at incorporating more student voice for the remainder of the year, and again, the recess piece is probably our biggest problem, and we are wanting to continue to problem solve around that. Any questions? Thank you. Give it back to you.
Any general questions for the group?
So several times there was reference to the setbacks of COVID. And so I guess this is kind of a generalized question. Are we doing any research, or are we aware of research on lessons learned with the pandemic response stuff? I've heard a little bit that Harvard was doing some studies, that locking down the kids did the wrong way to go. And now they're talking about a pandemic X. I'm just worried that we're going to repeat the mistakes we just made. And maybe this is not, maybe this is a bigger question.
I don't know if James wants to talk about some research that I don't think we are not doing any specific research about that. I do think that we definitely have seen impacts, and we want to learn from them and want to be aware of what research is out there, and James is going to talk about that.
So broadly, the research all kind of points in the same direction. The number of days that students spent not having in-person instruction is then correlated with decreases in performance. That's greatly exaggerated for students in poverty, and it's much worse in math than it is in reading. So and I don't know that anybody can particularly pinpoint why is it so much worse in math. I mean, I think I've got some ideas, but I've not seen any data that's really confirming that one. The kind of in terms of what are we going to do about it, that's something that I'd say sort of collectively, we really don't know what works at scale for that, because that's not a problem that we've seen in the past where sort of that many students ended up that far behind. We saw some initial reports, lots of publications about the impacts of tutoring, which tutoring great. It also doesn't scale very well. So in places that have tried that, it doesn't actually end up working because it's hard to get that many kids to show up for tutoring when we're already having trouble getting them to show up for school.
So reflecting back prior to pandemic, how are our numbers looking? Are we getting caught back up? Do we still see a big sag?
We can definitely identify certain grade levels that are doing worse as a result, certainly math. On the other hand, if we're looking at our early literacy data, that's actually better than it was pre-pandemic.
Chuck, I would just add, when we talk about data, we're talking about children. And so if we look at, a child in first grade, then there was pandemic, then by now they're fifth grade? And so, those are big gaps of time. What I most appreciate, what I've heard this evening, is specific tier 1 support, as well as tier 2 and tier 3 interventions, and the alignment across schools, and the working of all 10 principals and their staff. You've heard letters training, you've heard common assessments, you've heard interim assessments, that they are working together as a team. That's how we're going to turn that tide. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I can see that, see the effort. We're trying so many different things, and this is unprecedented times. Where we have to get these kids back. I appreciate it.
To follow up on James's early literacy, you do see a nice kind of stair step up each of the last 3 years in the early literacy scores, which with all the effort we're putting in is very encouraging.
I have a quick question. It's kind of related to the math piece. Is that I heard a lot of talk about math talks and common language and consistent strategies. And I'm wondering if then I see a lot of discussion about family and parent engagement. And I'm wondering around math specifically. I know as a parent, I'm constantly insecure that I'm not aligned with what is being taught in school because it is so different with math from how we learn. And so I'm wondering if there's anything in our curriculum or if there's any ways to help bring parents along to help when they come home and they need support, because I know I'm doing it wrong. And thankfully I've had success with, we've had a couple teachers where in specific things like, area modeling and stuff like that, where they've sent a video home or they've sent references for parents to be able to not send their kids down the rabbit hole. But I'm wondering if there's like a resource that kind of across the district we could make available for parents so that we are aligned as well with the math talks and things.
Yeah, we have done some of that as a district. One of the ones that we really want to make that's been successful is making sure that regardless of the parents' comfort with math, and we know statistically most parents aren't, that they can have some tools to ask questions so that they can get their son or daughter to talk about it. As some specific strategies, any of you have anything that's worked in that area?
Sometimes teachers will send examples. So like if they're doing it, they'll show some different steps. I know during our student-led conferences in October, students would show some different ways of doing it. And so I think it's just communicating in the newsletter, giving examples. But I think we could do a better job of like helping every parent with that. But I know in a lot of like IEP meetings and things like that, I would talk more with the parents about it's okay to show them another way. So multiple pathways. You're not doing it wrong. You're not going to hurt them, right? Because they might have that way of thinking, or they might do it a different way too. So that's what we just encourage, is that math discourse, practice, multiple pathways. There's not one right way. So that's what we're trying to encourage too.
I'll add one thing as well. I can connect with that. As an elementary teacher, I'm still having a hard time with, especially as my kiddo gets older, but we really try to emphasize the fluency piece and play games with your kiddos. Talk about numbers at home. Skip count with them. If I have 25, what's 10 less? If I have 37, what's 2 more? So trying to have that strength and number sense piece so that there is a way to help at home and support and building up some of that important piece at home. But then at school, you know, we can teach the complex variety of strategies that we use to get there, as opposed to the standard algorithm, which we were all taught at such a young grade.
And then lastly, I would share that another opportunity is through conferencing. And so while we have a lot of open communication between families and teachers, a great way to do that is through conferences, through fall and spring conferences. So if a specific student is struggling in a certain area, working with that family on, okay, this work on this strategy and let's work on it together. And I know a lot of our staff have worked with families in that way, just sitting down face-to-face, one-on-one, helping teach those multiple ways.
So it sounds like it's kind of, it has to be, I guess where I'm going with this is there something where the entire impetus for how to bring parents along and align parents isn't have to be kind of one-off and individualized and tailored? Like, is there a curriculum resource, right? Like, is that something we could, the district could help support with math specifically? I think literacy seems a little bit more intuitive. We read to kids, you read books, and
so I think that is a yes and question. Mm-hmm. Later tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit about ELA adoption. We also have a need for new mathematics. As I see the principals sitting there saying yes, please, and you remember that, when we're talking about impacting students, you have the same teachers that are letters training that would also be, that's the unique part of elementary, is that they must teach everything to the same children. So that is a passion that I have in mathematics. That has been my life. And my life goal is to make sure that all children see themselves as scientists, mathematicians, artists, all of those things. So yes, and that is our work. So as we look at those numbers, as we look at students mastering standards, it is the work that we must do as well as literacy. So there's not one that's more important. I would say that we have bright lights. I'm looking at some of the principals that I've spent time in their, what math talk looks like across the schools. It's really important that young children know and understand how to add, subtract, like in their head. That's not something that I remember as a child learning, but all of the systems of 10, the groupings of 10, the work that many of the staff did here with TDG, and John, you can speak to that. That is something that we would love to revisit and requires professional development as well as funding. So yes, and so if you want to just expand a little bit about what the work has been done, but that was pre-pandemic.
It was pre-pandemic, but we still have many staff that went through it, and coming back to some of those strategies is something we can do in the interim while we're waiting for a new curriculum. I would say even independent of it. You can teach math at a deep level with any curriculum, and some of those concepts, Math Talk is one of those. Talking about representing the math visually is another strategy. Generalizing math from one concept to the next is another strategy. There's all these things that you can do independent of that, and that was part of that training that we can loop back to.
Well, thank you. Thank you all so much for being here until 8 o'clock with us. This was really, really exciting to see all of this, and I so appreciate. I feel like for the first time, I have a little bit more understanding of what I'm looking at and why I'm looking at it, and that we're all looking at the same stuff. And I'm just really grateful, and thank you all. I know this is not. It's 3 slides, but I know it's a ton of work behind that backs all of that up, and just really proud of the progress that everybody's made, and thank you so much.
I do have a couple of questions. Sorry, John. I think, Katja, you referenced it, and this was something that is, I have a wondering around. You mentioned you had kindergartners who ended really strong, but didn't start strong as first grade. So I'm wondering, does that have to do with what's being measured on the test and the difference between the 2 grades? Is that summer slip? Why is that? Because I would love to be able to see the trend where one student just keeps making growth the whole way and not going back and having to start over again. What is that?
I would say for some of those kids, it's definitely the summer slide. And so we've seen now that they're in first grade, they were able to recoup some of that and actually are on that trajectory. Some others are still, the reality is that they're still struggling and that we're still supporting them. But
does the test itself take summer slide into account? I'm guessing not. It just ends at 1 grade and starts the next. So if we're testing in the fall, we're really not taking that into account. So without like a balanced calendar, we're probably always going to see that backflow. Ooh, said it out loud.
Slip that in there.
Yeah. That, and then the acronym TDG was mentioned a couple times. Can you please explain TDG?
Yeah. Here we go. Teacher Development Group. It's a math consulting group that uses research-based mathematical practices.
Okay.
And what they call a studio model, when we had them, when you would have teachers come into another one of their colleagues' classroom to see the consultant do it, and then the teacher do it, so that they had a model to see. So that was that.
Yes. Of course. Thank you.
All right. So I have a couple questions. They're not really questions. They're opportunities for you to share. Don't you like that? Opportunities for you to share. This year, as part of your SIP plan, you have gone through 6-week cycles with both your staff and then getting together, as well as you are doing now new walkthroughs, which means that you are getting together in a problem of practice, and I've been able to share some of these, but you are sharing your problem of practice, and then as leaders, you're walking through each other and giving feedback. And you were talking about street data. So would 3 of you or so share what those experiences have been? Have they been successful? Has it changed your practice? Has it changed your relationships? And has it changed or impacted student achievement?
So I'm going to go back to our first graders. We had invited folks to come and do a walkthrough in our building and received some feedback around inconsistencies in schedules. So some teachers didn't have schedules posted at all. Some had them very vaguely posted. And when you added up the minutes, we really weren't at the 90-minute block. So that was embarrassing, but also a great growth moment. And so our staff came together and really honestly and authentically looked at, okay, are we really teaching 90 minutes? And came together as a grade level and ensured that we're doing that. So for us, that was, while not great in the moment, really powerful, actually.
And I just speak to being the newest elementary school administrator on the team. What it has helped what has helped me do is understand where we are as a system, what some of our priority goals are. And you've heard mentioned quite a few times working towards that guaranteed and viable curriculum. So what opportunities do our kids get in each of our elementary classrooms? What does that look like? What does that sound like? What does that feel like? It's helped us have more collective efficacy, right? So that our collective conversations are really around what our priority goals are. And again, I'll just speak to having been in other systems, things are done a certain way, and coming into this system learning, okay, what are our goals, what are our tasks ahead, and how can we work in team and collaborate around that? That's been really important and invaluable for me. And I think then you take that information and work with your school leadership team based on what as colleagues you've been working on, so that we can impact the greater system together. And then when we go back into our elementary schools, impacting the students that we serve. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I'll be the third. I'll take one. I would love to share our impact around the 6-week data cycles. I've heard a lot of feedback from our teachers about how there is a sense of increased accountability around that, but there's also a sense of safety and security as we're developing consistency in terms of our commitments. And so when we're constantly revising and reflecting what is it that we're doing, what are our priorities, when we move from one action plan to another action plans, we're not forgetting the work that we've established here. It's just we've recognized, hey, this has become part of our practice now. And so let's take that and let's build upon it. And so we're able to have lots of meaningful conversations around where do we want to take this next as we're monitoring our data to look at our students, and we're showing progress. And so I've been very grateful. At first I was like, I'm not sure how this is going to work. I don't know what this is going to look like. But I've really enjoyed that process this year and just the intentionality behind our conversations and moving us forward with consistency.
One more. I think Abby, you talked about pointing at you. I liked how you presented, and you talked about because we had spoken about the month of belonging, and how in your thinking you wanted to lead with that, because that sense of belonging and feeling like they were part of a school community, kind of like with Todd with Kids at Hope, every student belongs, every student is capable of learning at high levels. James, is there a way? Is there a way, because I'm just very curious about the connection of all of these things together with sense of belonging correlating to academic achievement and ability to move from the red zone into these green zones and feeling like, what, I really do belong here. I belong at school. I am capable of learning at high levels, because I think we do tend to talk about them a little bit separately. When the fundamental purpose of being in school is to learn things, and if you don't feel like you're learning, how do you feel like you belong?
So there's fantastic research on this that I don't know that I want to bore everybody with right now. But broadly speaking, motivation is tied to sense of belonging. Motivation and achievement are pretty linked, and they influence one another. With that said, it's pretty clear looking at the research data that prior achievement affects motivation about twice as much as motivation affects achievement. So the earlier we can get a student to be successful, the more likely they are to be motivated later. Yes, building motivation leads to more achievement, but it's a bigger relationship going the other way. The achievement breeds motivation quicker than the other way around. Yeah. Yeah, some pretty interesting research on that.
And I would say maybe the other way is true as well.
So motivation does,
Might push that, accelerate that,
yeah,
that disconnection.
yes.
All right, thank you, everyone. Appreciate the time. It's a lot of work. Okay, so that concludes our reports for this evening. We have no old business under item 8. Under item 9, we have a couple of items. Item 9.1 is Resolution 2404, recognizing April as Month of the Military Child. Usually we do this at the end of the month with the military family, but we're hoping that we will receive an award later this month in recognition of our service towards military students. So we are going, we're going to set the mood here before we read this resolution. So hopefully we'll have an opportunity to bring in a representative military family later this month. But I would like to read this resolution and then hopefully we will pass it. So, like I said, this is resolution number 24-04, April 2024, as Month of the Military Child. Whereas the Peninsula School District serves school-age military-connected children, and whereas military families in the Peninsula School District include men and women on active duty service in the Air Force, Space Force, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, members of the Reserves and National Guard, and whereas the state of Washington, and therefore the Peninsula School District, is a member of the Interstate Compact on Educational Opportunity for Military Children, which addresses key issues encountered by military students, including enrollment, placement, attendance, eligibility, and graduation. And whereas military-connected children and their families move every 2 to 3 years, an average of 6 school moves during a child's life within the United States or abroad, disrupting academic routines and friendships. And whereas military-connected children also serve their country by demonstrating resilience, perseverance, cultural competency, and patriotism. And whereas military-connected children provide unique and valuable insights on learning, friendship, service to others, and heightened national and global awareness. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Peninsula School District Board of Directors and Superintendent recognize April 2024 as Month of the Military Child, and encourages all within our community to show appreciation and honor our military students and their families. Adopted this second day of April 2024. Is there any discussion prior to the vote? Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2404?
I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I will second.
It's been moved by Chuck and seconded by Jennifer to approve Resolution 2404, Month of the Military Child. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is carried. Resolution 2404 has been approved. Thank you. Item 9.2 is related to board operating protocols. So because...
Can I, just for a point of order?
Yes.
I think we have...
Of course. Yeah. You are free to go. Yeah, thank you.
They
Thanks,
don't need
Jack.
to stick around for this stuff.
Yes.
You may, though.
You may.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you. Because Lori and David aren't here, I don't think it's the right time for us to hammer out our actual board operating protocols, but I just wanted to chat a little bit about what they are and why it's important to have them. So this is something we started back in January in a retreat. As part of our board goals, we hold ourselves to a high standard as well, and we know that there are characteristics of highly effective boards, and one of them is to have operating procedures and things that we do, and something that we follow. Some of this has to do with really being deliberate about understanding and operating within our role and how it is separate from your role. The board really is here for vision, looking out, up and out, whereas the superintendent's role is down and in. So we are looking at the big picture and not being so much involved in the day-to-day operations. And so we will set some operating protocols that are very clear for us. we know that we are supposed to be setting goals. We do that through setting goals for the superintendent. We set goals for ourselves. I think tonight was an outstanding example of how we are kind of moving the ship in the right direction. So we have not adopted board operating protocols, but we've been so inconsistent for years with leadership. So it's time now. I think we are stable with the superintendent. We are stable with a strategic plan. We've got board goals, superintendent goals, district improvement plans, school improvement plans. Those goals, like you heard tonight, are very consistent. And so it's time for us to kind of tie everything together, I think, with the way that we operate. So, the board governs, decides what, district decides how, those types of things. So I think we can probably table the rest of the discussion to a retreat or when the others are here, unless there's anything else that you want to add. Just know that these are things that we're working on and we'll share with our public. And I don't know if I've mentioned, I'm part of the leadership WASDA cohort this year, so I'm going through trainings, learning about best practices and trying to make sure that we align as a board how we do that. I will be attending the National School Board Association conference this weekend, so learning about school districts who do it differently around the country and what we can bring here. I think there are some areas that we could clean up, maybe the way that we hold our meeting, the order of the agenda. So we will pull all of these into practice probably at the beginning of the school year in August. So that would be my goal for having our protocols established. But if there's anything you want to add, please do.
Yeah, I would love, I'm really happy you're able to go to the NSBA conference. And around that, I think as kind of the newest board member, one of the things I've struggled with, it sounds silly, but the calendar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are we looking at? When are we looking at it? And making sure that what we're asking of staff and of teachers and of principals, like, makes sense with the cadence of the school year and is aligned with, that we're asking the right questions, right? I mean, as a board, our skill sets are not within education, and that's, on one hand, it's by design, and so sometimes it feels a little bit like, we are heavily reliant on, superintendent and staff to tell us, this is where we need to be focused, but then our responsibility, again, up and out, is to our community, to our families, to our taxpayers, to be asking the questions of the day. So how do we align those best from a consistent calendar so we know what to expect? Because I really like that fall, we're going to look at our SIPs and set our goals from spring. And here we are now, at this time now, looking back, fall comparing to winter. So that's the kind of thing, like, once we can get those kind of protocols, like this time of the year, every year, regardless of who's in your chair, that those things are going to happen consistently and predictably, I think it'll serve the board and the district really well. So whatever you can learn with calendar and cadence and those things would be awesome.
I think that's important.
Yeah.
Jeff, anything from you?
No, you're right on track.
Thoughts on? It's unusual, I think, to not have an established protocol. So I'm excited to be the team to develop it. And like you said, that will outlive all the six of us for sure. So.
Well, one thing I really appreciate about this board is that you are very thoughtful about assembling a structure and a framework that will live beyond. And that is also my shared desire as well, is to build the best system for children. And it takes time. It's not just, you can't just wave a magic wand and have 100% of students achieving. And it takes teamwork, it takes humble, I really appreciated Katja, her reflection of a meeting where people came and looked at and gave feedback, and then changing the system and bringing it to the attention. That's how we will build that. So anytime you have an opportunity to go to a national or even a state or even a district-wide where people are in similar roles talking about the work and talking about their stories of things that didn't go well and better stories of building better systems so that all children can learn, all children feel like they belong and can succeed. So I wish you the very best, and I look forward to you bringing back information.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. All right, so more to come on the protocols, certainly. Moving on to item 9.3, this is actually pressing. So this is the discussion of WASDA permanent and legislative positions. So if you're following along, actually, oh, you don't have your computer up. Okay. So WASDA has a list of permanent positions, WASDA, Washington State School Directors Association, a list of permanent positions. These are things that we always support. It's more like a list of core values. And then legislative positions. So these are items that we put forth as school boards that really focus more on what we will advocate for collectively as a group during the legislative session. So we are at the tail end of the window for being able to make amendments to those this year. And then in the fall, we will have the legislative assembly that the whole membership, all school directors across, well, each school district has a representative to vote on what will be pushed forth. So there are a couple items that we have discussed kind of loosely over the past few months about things that we think are missing from this, or maybe some amendments that we wanted to talk about. So we've talked about capital funding, literacy, and AI. So we did find, I'll just go ahead and knock this one off. There is a position that was put forth last fall about AI that just basically says we'll support legislation that includes responsible and ethical use of AI. So I don't know that we need to put anything more towards that, but Jennifer, do you want to speak to the capital projects piece that you've been looking at, and then I can talk to the others?
Okay. Yeah. Well, so there was kind of in context the Wakayacum lawsuit around capital projects, right, being that went all the way to the Supreme Court and was basically, I want to say the court upheld the current position that it is a shared responsibility where the local school district must pass bonds or levies, typically bonds, at a supermajority in order to receive state funding. And that they are not considering, the state at this point, based on that decision, does not consider capital projects part of the part of the definition of basic education. So I think that adding that language that I think, did you write?
I have that one.
You have that one, yeah. I think that's the starting point.
Okay.
Is that I think as Peninsula School District, we've been on quite a journey with our capital projects, and I think the learning that probably the biggest learning that our whole community has taken away is how is the building we're in not part of basic ed. And so, do you
I'll
mind
read
reading?
it, sure. And
what
for
you
anyone
have?
who wants to look it up, if you just search WASDA, WSSDA positions catalog, then you can search through all these. But they're existing, now this is a permanent position, not a legislative position. What it currently states is that WASDA believes financing school facilities is a partnership between the state and local districts. The state's fiduciary responsibility must be adequate to support mandated initiatives and ensure safe, healthy schools that support high-quality teaching and learning. So I propose that we add an amendment that says WASDA believes that safe, healthy schools that support high-quality teaching and learning are foundational to basic education, and then follow up with the rest about the fiduciary partnership between the state and local districts. I think it's important, like you said, that we get that language in there, that having appropriate and equitable facilities across all districts are part of basic education. So I will say that tonight, we're not voting on anything tonight, so we are going to have to pull a special meeting together probably on Thursday that I would imagine would be on Zoom. And we'll announce that, but that will be when we vote on it, because we have to have it voted on by a board before we could submit it. So kick that language around, I guess, and we will discuss it further in that.
I think that's kind of foundational, is that is asserting that the school itself is part of basic education.
Yeah.
So could I ask that you just clarify for anyone that might be listening? So you make that recommendation, and then where does that go?
So that will go then to the legislative, it will go to one of the resolutions committee or the legislative committee. I sit on the resolutions committee, and actually David sits on the legislative committee. So we just make sure, the role of the committees is just to receive all of these amendments or new positions from all of the districts across the state and put it in a catalog that will go out to vote in the fall. So it's kind of, the committees are sort of a filter, so they'll look and see, if you're writing something that already exists, we'll probably put it back in, you know, or align it to something that already exists. If it's a new position, then we'll add a new one. But any changes, so if we submit something and the resolutions committee decides they don't like it exactly the way it is, or it needs to go someplace else, they will kick it back to that school district to make sure that our intent matches with what they're doing, if that makes sense. If they're gonna say, this is very close to something that already exists, can we just blend it in with something else? So it's a, yeah, filter, okay. Yeah.
Well, I think we've talked a little bit about the Clean Buildings Act. I know Ashley's spoken to it, Patrick has spoken to it, and in my read of the legislative positions, I did not see anything specific to that mandate. So I would propose that as Peninsula School District, we submit a new position around support around the Clean Buildings Act. And I think there's a good precedent for that. When the legislature came out with the class size reduction mandate, WASDA crafted a position that essentially said that they initiate and support legislation to fully fund the associated costs with the class size reduction. And I think it's appropriate to do something similar with the Clean Buildings Act. So I think if you want me to just kind of read, I used that as the precedent, and then I tweaked it a little bit with some facilities lingo. So I propose we say that WASDA shall initiate and or support legislation to fully fund components associated with mandated Clean Buildings Act compliance, including but not limited to energy audits, planning, design, permitting, construction, commissioning, and monitoring. Additionally, compliance timelines should take into account a district's long-range facilities plan and provide exemptions for buildings that are scheduled to be modernized or replaced within certain timeframes. Because one of the things that we do, there is a legislative position on, is that schools have to have a long-range facilities plan. And so I think there's a little bit of a disconnect between, you know, the right now, you know, 2026 Clean Buildings Act going into effect and the clock is ticking, with districts have built out long-range facilities plans, and it doesn't make sense to retrofit a building that may be in 5 or 10 years, is, you know. So I just added that. I have some additional language that I don't know that we want to include, because it starts to get a little bit into the weeds about, you know, defining energy improvements and building efficiencies as capital construction and not maintenance dollars, and as such they are subject to the challenges of passing bonds and levies, because that is a unique condition of public school facilities that corporate and private and even state facilities do not have to contend with, right? Like if Amazon needs to bring a building to compliance, they do it. They don't have to go to voters and ask for a supermajority approval for the funding to do that. So, but I don't know at this point that I don't know. I feel like keeping it sort of a clean statement like that is probably the best approach, since there isn't anything there right now. So I don't know. What do you think? Yeah.
And, yeah, we'll put it forward, and it'll probably be, other people will have input.
Yeah, I would suspect that this probably will see. I'd be curious to see if other districts are keyed in on this to the way we are, just given kind of the spread of our facilities, the age, the condition of a lot of our facilities, and the amount of money it would take to come into compliance with this. So.
Yeah, I think it'd be well received. I'm hearing more rumblings about a lawsuit rather than trying to come up with a solution. Just because we write and accept a position doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Right,
it's just really, as WASDA is the largest collective advocacy group of elected officials in the state. So that's what this is. It's instead of just one school board advocating for it, it's all school boards advocating for it.
Right.
Yeah.
And the only other one I have, which is a little more in the weeds, is I'm going to propose that we amend just slightly, but it's very important to me that we amend and currently it's legislative priority number 10, and it's, again, capital facilities. It's about funding safe, healthy, contemporary school buildings. So if you go to the list, and sort by priorities, it's number 10 there. And it's a pretty long one, and I'm not going to read the entire priority. The opening paragraph says, WASA shall initiate or support legislation that establishes an ongoing, sustainable, and reliable source and system of funding for safe, healthy, and contemporary school buildings. To achieve this level of funding, the legislature should consider, and then there's quite a few bullet points. I think they're missing a very important bullet point in the second one, where they define development of a new school construction funding formula that includes property acquisition and design costs, uses the national average for square footage required, and true market cost per square foot to construct. That first line that includes property acquisition and design costs, there's actually more to it than that, and I think that's something that's really not understood very well by legislators, by a lot of people who maybe aren't in the design construction world, and that is construction costs versus total project costs, right? And those are radically different numbers. And we focus on construction costs, but we are on the hook for total project costs. Mm-hmm. And so I would like us to amend the funding formula that includes to explicitly say total project cost. Again, including but not limited to property acquisition, design and engineering costs, permitting fees, life cycle cost analysis, and building commissioning. I mean, there's so many, they call them soft costs, but they're not soft. They cost they cost a lot of money. And so to accurately reflect what school districts have to pay for with facilities.
So Jennifer, could I get you just to give a ballpark example, like a really simple example? If we built a school that was X, right? Total versus soft.
Is Patrick here?
He's not here.
Is Ashley here? Is she not? Yeah. So,
Ashley, can you? Because I think this is important. This has been my learning as a superintendent.
So
Who's not a builder?
ultimately, a pre-COVID project cost structure is going to be completely different than a post-COVID cost structure. Things nowadays and the cost percentages are completely different than what we were looking at beforehand. Some of it's due to just shortage of materials post-COVID and may normalize over time. But ultimately, when we start looking at what Jennifer is referencing as far as the soft costs versus your actual construction, digging up the ground, putting the posts in and building your building, those soft costs that are associated is all your due diligence work, all your architectural engineering work, all of your studies, your surveys, vetting the ground, the water, the runoff, all of that, all of the permitting costs. Those can run us millions of dollars on a single building project before we've even truly broken ground. And those are pieces that the state limit what we can actually claim when it comes to any of our SCAP, state match, any of that. So that is, and the legislature tried to do some fixes through this last legislative season as far as what they'll actually reimburse, but they're still capping what is reimbursable. And that's what we need to be able to actually make moves and change, because districts really, it's not equitable when you're looking at what districts can actually raise from their local community for those buildings. You do end up with smaller and mid-sized districts having facilities that are not what you would see in larger districts, simply because they can spread that cost amongst a much larger population and get a really quality building, where you have smaller school districts that are facing a significant decline in their facilities with no ability to raise the funds to replace it. And if there's not additional help out there, that divide just keeps growing.
And I would say too, I think we have some examples here in our own district, right? The difference between a school that's able to tap into a municipal water source, that's able to tap into sewer, versus ones that they are fully contained on their own site, their own like mini municipality. That is extremely expensive and challenging. There's a lot of uncertainty and unknowns, and when there's uncertainty and unknowns, that drives up costs. So all of that is to say that total project cost really needs to be explicitly stated, and some examples given to them. Additionally, with the Clean Buildings Act, with energy code becoming stricter, with environmental regulations becoming stricter, all of those soft costs are getting more expensive now. There's just so much more due diligence you have to do. So, yeah. So I think we need to put that in there front and center.
Yeah. Thank you for looking at that and having the language to put into that.
Oh, sure.
I would not have been able to do that.
And this one, there's one, and then, so there's, I don't know, maybe, there's probably a dozen bullets, which I think are good. They all need to be in there as well. There's one more that I'm wondering if, Ashley, if I can put you on the spot again, if you could maybe help us with this, because recently there was a really powerful presentation given by a graduate student at UW about the SCAP funding distribution becoming less and less equitable and going to districts that are able to pass bonds and levies, right? And with that, and help me understand this correctly, at the end of the cycle, if say there has not been enough bonds and levies passed, that SCAP funding goes away. So I think it would be worth it's reappropriated. I think if those dollars are there, they stay there and they go back into urgent repair grant program, energy efficiency saving programs grant, and any of these capital projects grants that the legislature has put in place for districts to access that never have enough money. So it's all right? It should all be one pool. So I'd like to see something that any unclaimed SCAP funding at the end of the fiscal year or the biennium, I'm not sure which, shall be reappropriated to get me on track.
Yeah, so what we're going to deal with, though, in that situation is the legislature puts those caveats in there because then it does allow them to reappropriate the funds and use it on something else that's higher priority for them. And they can turn around and they know, like, hey, if we set it up this way, we can show that we're going to give 271 million, but we know that they're only going to access 200 million, and we're going to be able to count on that other 71 million to offset the costs over there. So ultimately, what we would be looking at is at the end of each biennium, we do want it to sit in that program that it was designed to support.
Okay.
Because the districts that do end up dealing with these significant shortfalls do tend to be your K-8 districts. Mm-hmm. They tend to be your 2-school elementary, middle school, or a 1-school K-8 school. Mm-hmm. And your entire voting population is maybe 200 ballots. Mm-hmm. And of course, they'll say, well, we have other programs that can assist them. There's not other programs that are going to come in and build $100 million school for them. Mm-hmm. That's just not attainable. Mm-hmm. And when we're talking about even the Clean Buildings Act, my personal opinion is just simply that there's no way for the state to fund it. Mm-hmm. So if we're asking, like, hey, come out and fully fund this, we know they're going to say no because the state can't afford to fund the requests that are in this bill. They just can't. I mean, you're looking at a district of our size that would be out $15-20 million to get into compliance, and we're a single district. Right. And of course, then from the 2019 to the 2022 change in that bill, they put more requirements and more restrictions in there that then are going to cost us more. So ultimately, it would be nice if we saw something saying, if you are not going to fully fund it, then you do need to exempt school districts. This was a bill that was never written for school districts. It was written for other public entities. Right. So why are we getting looped in now at this point? Because they're not going to be able to come back and fund it. So if we make the request for them to fully fund it, we're setting ourselves up for them to come back and say, we can't fully fund it. Mm-hmm. Well, then do something else. take the requirement off, lessen the requirement, do something to grandfather in certain buildings, certain districts that don't have the ability to go out and pass a levy and just simply replace their buildings. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think. Well, so I think. So for the, I think we might have conflated a couple things, because I think that relates to what we were thinking for the new position, right? And then
Correct.
so maybe just change the language, compliance timelines or compliance full stop, right? Should take into account long-range facilities plan, and then, you know, we could add the language there because of the unique requirements, right? And that was part of the extra language I had, that whole building energy retrofits are capital improvements, not maintenance expenses, and therefore subject to additional costs and uncertainties of voter approval, dependent on voter approval of bonds or levies, which is not something that any other buildings are subject to.
Well, and ultimately, when you're talking, like, this is a perfect example of a true unfunded mandate. We can't go out and increase our operational levy to get more maintenance dollars in to turn around and upgrade the facilities the way that they would need to be done. We are capped. So then the other option then, what the state would tell us is, okay, you need to go now for a capital levy. Okay, if we go out for another capital levy, we are now taxing our community basically twice over for things that the state has come down and dictated that we will do, but we have to go out and find the money to get in compliance, or we have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars of fines each year in order to do what it is they asked us to do that they're not willing to fund. So.
Right, well, that's why I think it's important that we start from that facilities are part of basic ed, right? And then I think maybe we could, I can see maybe adding like the full stop, not just timelines, but compliance, right?
And well, and we need this because we're coming up to that compliance timeframe where they're stating that we're going to start incurring, you know, the fines and the penalties. And it's not just a fine or a penalty. They've made it so that it's for every square foot you're out of compliance plus your initial fine in addition, and that it's reoccurring each year that you're not in compliance. And they have put language in there that those fines and fees can escalate. So if ultimately we end up having to weigh the cost of simply being out of compliance because we can't raise the capital necessary to get into compliance, but then those are dollars in order to pay those fines and fees that has to come from the general fund. So it's coming from the general fund, and now we're having to offset our staffing. We're having to offset the amount that we're investing into our kids and our programming in order to give money to the state based upon a law that they put together to fine us but won't fund us for, and now we're having to funnel more money back to the state. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a more, it's kind of a exponential sort of revolving door.
Exactly.
Which is actually one point of the legislative priority number 10, when they do say, it's reminding me of the sales tax, right? Like we pay sales tax on school projects.
Correct.
Right.
Even though they're giving us the money.
Right.
But then we still have to pay tax on the project that's being built with the money that they're giving us to give it back to the state.
Yeah.
That's exactly what this would be. And ultimately, it's like, okay, you're collecting those fines and fees from all of these school districts, from all public entities that are required to adhere. That's going to be another, basically, I'm just going to call it another tax that the state is then collecting, because there's going to be a lot of districts, buildings, public entities that are not in compliance. Where's that money going? Are they going to turn around and pull that money now and then start giving it to districts to help fund the cost of getting into compliance? Well, then why fine us to begin with?
Yeah. Well, so I guess my question goes back to more specifically, though, to unclaimed SCAP funds.
That if we can get something in the language that truly states that they cannot reappropriate those funds for another use, and that if they've built it into the budget that is how much is going to be allowed for the biennium, and if because of the restrictions that they place, there's not enough districts that are able to tap into that, it needs to sit there.
Okay.
Because if they allow themselves that loophole to reappropriate, then that's what they're going to do.
Okay, because I was thinking like it should go in, they've got the half a dozen urgent repair grant programs, small school modernization grants. There are programs that exist within the realm of capital facilities, but if it makes more sense to like, don't touch it at all, it stays in SCAP because you may have a rush of.
Well,
because
maybe there,
either way,
maybe, you know, as this iterates through, that there would be some kind of reconsideration time, you know, if after 5 years, but the problem is right now, people cannot pass bonds.
Right, correct.
At supermajority.
Right.
And so then it just perpetuates, especially if that money is allocated, knowing full well that they are going to reallocate. It
Yeah.
should stay. I agree with you, Ashley. It should
Because-
stay at least for a time.
Correct. Because
whether
my
it's
fear is-
2 biennium or
Correct.
you know something.
Yeah, because my fear is by putting it into those smaller competitive grants, those 9 times out of 10, you guys, they're tied to demographics, which then turn around and take out a good chunk of the districts that very well may not be able to still pass a bond. They may not be able to get additional levy dollars in, but now based upon their demographics, they can't even be competitive for those smaller targeted grants. So now once again, we've taken out an entire population of districts. Like most of the time, are not competitive in those grants based upon our demographics. So you know, thank goodness we do have community support. You know, we were able to pass a bond. We were able to get, you know, our new buildings and such. But in a district that may not have that level of community support and they can't pass it, but demographically they align to us, they're not going to be competitive for those other grants either. So it's going to go to districts like Seattle, like Federal Way, that they have the taxing population to pass $500 million bonds at a very, very low millage rate. And that just perpetuates the problem that we're currently seeing.
I think in tandem with this, though, we should probably work with Representative Caldeer and get a bill written so that we can have something on the books to support with this piece. So it has to still come through Olympia. So if we can have a bill written and then have WASDA's advocacy behind it, probably be the 1-2 punch. So I think doing both would be important at this point. And now is the time to start writing those, actually.
Exactly.
And I
Get
just
'em
say
in early.
Caldeer because I think the other two, we don't know who, you know, Senator Randall may be there, Representative Hutchins won't, so I think we've got to start it with her.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you, on the spot, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
The only other one that we talked about was writing a position about literacy as a foundation of all learning. So, and cooperation between PESB, OSPI, the state, and local boards about making sure that we have appropriate funding, curriculum, training, and support for all of our diverse learners.
And that will align with the work that should be coming out hopefully next month. A recommendation draft is being written through OSPI that will be then communicated with legislators into the next session. So that will be also a focus.
Okay.
And I'll give you a copy of that as soon as I'm able.
great. So you're thinking that is, do you have something that you think we should draft, or should we make sure we're aligned?
I have something, but I would like to have you look at it and make sure it aligns with what's already happening.
Okay.
And like I said, we'll have to have a special meeting about this to actually vote on them, probably on Thursday.
Okay.
So if we can find a time that we'll just do it by Zoom. It'll be open to the public, of course.
Mhm.
And then we'll have final language for all of these amendments or new proposals and just vote on them so we can get them sent off by the 8th. Deadline is the 8th. Anything else to add on that? Okay. All right. Great. Okay, so we are on superintendent's report.
Great. Well, I want to thank you, principals, for staying. It was a great, great evening. I have at the top of my notes, thank the principals, and it's really, I'm so appreciative and so proud of the work that, John, you have sponsored with the elementary principals, and really those those walkthroughs. I mean, that is such best practice and changing practice over time and impacting students. So I just really want to thank the principals. I also want to thank our national board teachers. I am always amazed that work. I had the opportunity to work with in Tacoma when we opened a middle school that was a national board middle school, and part of that recreation of that school was that everyone involved in that school was either nationally board certified and or they were working on their national boards. And so that was part of that that focus in that school. And the ability for all of the staff to be speaking the same language, to be looking at the same data, and to be videoing and looking at student work and looking at their practice was just really, really powerful. So watching that and realizing that our staff are doing that because they professionally want to grow and they want to be the best educators that they can, and that is the standard. It's the national board standard. I'm just really, really proud. And so thank you for the two that came, but also all of the people that recertified. I have some information on ELA adoption I would like to read this evening. The Peninsula School District is currently undertaking a significant initiative, adopting a new English Language Arts ELA curriculum across all grade levels from kindergarten through 12th grade, which is amazing, the K through 12. This process is being rolled out with varying timelines for different grade levels. Still, the objective remains consistent: to equip our students with a rigorous ELA curriculum that aligns with standards and utilizes evidence-based methodologies. Families, we are looking for input. The K-12 ELA Family Survey is linked to our ELA Curriculum Adoption website. And if you go on our website, you will see, click, it's a big blue button. The survey is open now through April 22nd, so most of the month. You can access the ELA Curriculum Adoption website from the PSD website, as I just said, by clicking on Academics, choose either elementary education or secondary, whichever, or both, and then click on the link for ELA curriculum adoption. The website provides information about the adoption process and timeline, as well as a link to the family survey. So please share your voice today. This work on the adoption will be in the fall and really go through most of next year. So we're really looking forward to that. It's pretty amazing that we are doing K through 12. We knew that we wanted to do the K through 5, and then the 6 through 12 became an opportunity, did it not, James? So it's pretty amazing that our school district will be doing that. So I want to thank all of the staff for that and thank Natalie for a great speech. She's my speechwriter. As I stated, in April, at the end of April, beginning of May, we should have a state plan on literacy and literacy focus. That is the work that I've been involved in with the Hunt Institute and OSPI, our literacy task force. So I look forward to sharing that information. I just want to say, as a Military Child Month, when you were reading those things, thinking of how many different schools I went to, how many different places we moved to back in the 70s. I'm that old. But that was what all military families did. If your parent was going to go and get trained, you would move with them for 2 or 3 or 5 months, and then you would move. So I just really want to thank the board for supporting that. And we did check with OSPI. They will be making announcements for Purple Star designation at the end of this month. So we have a lot of choir, band events, musicals. We have so many things that are going on. So I just want to tell the families that we're really appreciative. Every event that we go to, I know we were just kind of debriefing about all of the events. And there's a lot of them, so we're dividing and conquering. And I know that the board is at many as well, but it's pretty amazing to think that 3 years ago we were not doing anything. And now all of the fun events that families are involved in. So it's pretty awesome. I just wanted to shout out, I had the opportunity to be at KPMS last week and sat with the principal while he did some street data. You guys didn't really define what that was, but street data is really talking out on the streets with kids. I mean, actually talking to kids, student voice. And it was really powerful having a new principal do that. And Luke is just very engaging, and the students were a little quiet. So, you know, getting students used to speaking, feeling comfortable, feeling confident in their spoken voice as well as their written voice is really a work in progress. But it was really fun to sit with him and listen. I am a middle school person, so I always enjoy students and what they like to talk about. On Monday, April 8th, we have the opportunity, we have a delegation from Nord University coming from Bodø, Norway, and they will be meeting with PLU, as well as they will be touring our TK out at Voyager, and seeing what a TK Barnehagen outdoor transitional kindergarten looks like in America, based upon some of the work that we actually went to Nord University. So I'm looking forward to that. One of the amazing things that we hope to get out of this meeting is that the Nord University and PLU, Pacific Lutheran University, having some kind of relationship. And we know that if there is some kind of agreement between PLU and a university in Norway, then our students, if they chose to go to PLU, could go to Norway to college at no cost. And so that's what we're looking at, building some kind of a relationship in that. So I feel like we're brokers. We're brokering relationships through TK kindergarten. So we're going to take them out, and they're going on a boat, and I know that there are some events on that day, so I'm looking forward to that. They're here on the 8th and 9th. We have CAPE this Saturday, so that is our STEM extravaganza for middle school students. Are you presenting?
I will have a booth.
You kind of rolled your eyes there.
No, I shouldn't have rolled my eyes. I'm actually really, really excited because I have these cool boards about women architects and the amazing buildings they've built, and, you know, like some really great information, because the architecture profession right now is hurting a little bit. So there's been a push from the national organization to basically dispel a lot of myths around what architecture is and what it isn't, and some really cool materials. So I hope to have my big, beautiful pictures of buildings and women architects attract a lot of middle schoolers to stop by and learn about it.
You'll be amazing. That is really an amazing event. If any of you have not been to that event, whether you like science or not, it's really a powerful event. So I look forward to going to that as well. As was stated, we do have Earth Day is on April 22nd, so that's the day before our next board meeting. And so we do have 2 schools that are nominated for Green School Department of Education. So we will find out on April 22nd if they have been accepted. That is Evergreen and Artendale. We've been a little quiet about that because we were asked to be. However, we have days planned and we have people coming out. So those 2 things are good thoughts. So we're excited about that, and we'll talk about that later. I hope that everyone has a wonderful spring break, because that will be between now and later. But before we let you go, I have Chris and John Yellowlees are coming up with something. And as Chris is coming up, I want to thank Chris for his work in the human-centered AI guidance for K-12, public schools. Chris was deeply involved in this, and Peninsula School District is mentioned in several of this. And this is one of the reasons why they have a short announcement and some little gifts to give.
Well, thank you. So earlier this winter, I think back in January, Creston got an email that was inviting the district to apply to speak at the Model Schools Conference in Florida, based off of us being a district that is looked at as a leader in AI right now. And so John and I had the pleasure of being interviewed, not like most conferences where you submit a proposal and they tell you yes or no. Like, we had to justify why we thought we should be there. And so we did succeed in that, and we will be going in June to present a presentation titled AI for Increasing Inclusion, and how some of our teachers are using AI focused around our MTSS program and our Universal Design for Learning work that we've been doing. And so with that, they sent us this fancy banner that says, do you want to hold that side? Innovative District. And they also sent us t-shirts for all of the board. So
So we're not sure where we're going to put the banner, do we, John?
I don't think we've decided that yet. I'll just add that there's only a small number of districts that are in that innovative district category, so it's quite an honor. And I think so far we're the only Washington school district, so we're really looking forward to representing and talking about our work on MTSS and AI. So it's a great opportunity. We'll figure out where to hang this. Somewhere.
Yeah, I just want to close and say I'm really proud of the team leaning into a new technology. It has been really an interesting journey. We just saw our first draft. We were being highlighted in a national business, I don't know the name of it off the top of my Business Week magazine. And they had an opportunity, John, myself, and Chris were interviewed about the innovative work that we're doing here in Gig Harbor in Peninsula School District. And ourselves and Stillicum are the only schools in the state of Washington that are being highlighted. And there's several school districts all over the nation. So it's a pretty beautiful publication, and we had some really, really nice pictures. So we will make sure that all of the board gets it, and we will make sure that we'll highlight it. So if anyone wants to see online, it's a beautiful publication, and it's really a highlight of many school districts and the work that they're doing. So it's amazing to read other school districts like from Kansas or from Iowa that are talking about letters training, talking about the work that they're doing in literacy, talking about the work with AI, their focus on CTE. Like, we're more similar than not as we look across the nation, and we really have leaned into some areas, I would say, in AI, UDL, all of these acronyms that, you know, we have to continually define in real language, but really trying to get all of our students at grade level and beyond. So I'm really proud of the work, and I really do like the banner, so it does need to go somewhere amazing. Thank you.
Okay, I think we will wrap up with board discussion or comments. Who wants to start?
I could say just a couple things. So, very proud of our schools and what's going on, to see the growth that's happening after these kids have had such a stressful time. I know it's a long ways back, but And I do look to WASDA maybe for the leadership, or the state in assessing the damage that was done through the lockdowns. It was a portion where we really needed. A lot of the plans that were on the shelves didn't call for locking down children. They were supposed to continue. So somehow things got skewed, got changed, and the whole response to this pandemic was happenstance. It just, each week we didn't know what was coming. That's not the way you do emergency response. There should be a matrix established, known. We should be able to look at the numbers. We should have been able to figure it out, and it shouldn't have been guesswork. So I hope that WASDA or somebody's going to take this and go, okay, let's put a plan together for the future so that we don't have. There was one on the shelf after SARS, somehow followed. So it's alarming to me that we're not talking, especially at a time like this when we're going to be evaluating the lessons learned. And I'm going to shut up.
I'll be brief. This is pretty cool. MSC means acronym soup. I immediately associate it with some Navy acronyms, but hey, we'll take it. But just kind of pulling back a little bit, I think, from focusing on schools in our district. I heard some things on the radio over the past couple of weeks that have really kind of set off a lot of thinking and discussions with parents, with other board members, with colleagues. And I would just like to encourage all of us to maybe give it a listen or give it a read. There's a new book out right now by Jonathan Haidt, who's a social scientist at New York Stern School. And he just came out with a book called The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. And I see people nodding because it's been making the rounds, but it's really fascinating. And I'm wondering, I guess where I'm going with this is, we have, I feel like in Peninsula School District, we have really leaned into technology. We've really leaned into AI. We've really leaned into things like our cell phone policy and the human-centered AI. And I'm wondering if there's a next step we can take with our leadership in being an innovative school in locating things like technology within the greater context of belonging and behaviors and all of these other things, because of the fact that we can now no longer disentangle the 6 or 8 hours that that our students are here from all of the other things that are going on with this wired 24 hours connected childhood. And one of the things that really struck me is that he talks specifically about 4 things. It's fundamentally optimistic, but he talks about the 4 things that need to happen. And one of them, 3 of them are very much relational to family and students, but one of them is he speaks to schools, and it is our cell phone policy. And he says very confidently that you will see a difference. Like principals places where they've done this sooner, they have seen a difference with how children treat each other, with how students relate to one another, with how students relate. So I'm really proud of the district for kind of, leading that, at least in the state. And I'd like to see us continue that work, not just with technology and technology's sake, but technology within the context of the whole child, all of our relationships, and really locating that in our discussions about belonging and how does that tool, how can it hurt, but how can it help? So anyway, Anxious Generation, it's very powerful. So I think we could all benefit from some of those learnings.
Thank you. Just to your point, Chuck, I just realized one of my social media memories popped up from a week or 2 ago, and it was when we had recently shut down everything from 4 years ago, and we were just really starting to understand how reliant we are on schools for so much more than academics, for transportation and counseling and feeding, and we said back then, if nothing else, let's use this as an opportunity to disentangle ourselves from all of that work. We need to rely on our community partners and do a better job of sharing the load. And it feels like 4 years later, we've actually doubled down with putting more requirements in our schools, and we're putting more, we need the counselors now because of all the mental health, the crisis that was born of this, but somewhere, I don't know, in the journey to get back into the classroom, we just took it all back on, and we haven't advocated for our staff in the way that I think we could have. So this is the work that I like to dig in on, and being part of the cohort that I'm in with these other school board members from around the state, I'm feeling everyone is struggling with the same things. However, I do have to give a shout out to the district and the work that we've done here, because we are not dealing with the budget crisis that literally every other district is right now. They are passing resolutions on some significant RIFs and staffing. They are struggling in ways that we aren't. So I am grateful for that, but still feel the pressures that we're doing too much. Did you read that whole book already?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I did. There are many podcasts, because he's on a podcast tour right now too. So there are some great ways to get to the meat of that. But one of the things that they said was, you need to have a community that will collectively say, parents say, no cell phones until high school. And if we can do that, he says that is the recipe for ridding ourselves of this plague with this the anxiety and the social media illness so I thought, what if this could be that place where we could do that? So something to think about for sure. I'm looking forward to the Norway trip. I won't be there on Monday. I will be coming back from New Orleans that day, but I think it'll be a really exciting trip to be able to show what we're doing. So I will cut it off with that. We could just kind of ramble on. One of the board operating protocols is to have short and concise meetings that aren't pedantic and gets the work done in a timely manner. So we'll work on that as well. Our next meeting will be here on April 23rd at 6 o'clock. Well, actually, our next meeting will be posted. We will probably have, like I said, that Zoom meeting this Thursday or Friday. But following that, our regular business meeting will be on April 23rd, 6 o'clock p.m. And with that, at 9:14, we're adjourned.